dedicated to the sports fan who's seen enough. Fanhood to Manhood. Shock therapy for the recovering sports fanatic. By Tommy Knoxville. A Notate Press audiobook. Copyright 2021. Read by Justin Straight. Chapter 1. I get it. When cheering for a team causes more suffering than joy. When it affects how we show up for those we love. When it becomes an excuse for binge spending, binge drinking, binge raging. When our obsession with the team's journey comes at the expense of our own. That's when an innocent hobby has turned toxic. Once upon a time, this was me. My mood, my esteem, and my testosterone levels depended on the athletic performance of strangers. Immersed in the delusion that their games had something to do with me, I'd gloat when they won and pout when they lost, sometimes for weeks at a time. Today, 5 years clean, whether my old team wins or loses is of little concern. I focus on my own season now, and am happier for it. Rehab wasn't easy in our sports-crazed culture. But the core realization that made it possible was this. Sports teams are mere businesses. Fans are mere customers. And life is too short to spend it a glorified cheerleader. Some will find comparing fans to cheerleaders sexist. But right or wrong, seeing fanhood as cheerleading and team gear as a cheerleading skirt was essential to my recovery. And it's important that you hear the truth here when everyone else is content to perpetuate the industry's myth. It's about tradition, loyalty, hard-won pride. It's a tribe thing, a primal thing embedded in our DNA. The struggle, the triumph, the sacrifice and glory. Being a sports fan is part of what it means to be a real man. Bullshit. Real men don't revolve their lives around the athletic performance of strangers. They don't prance about in other men's jerseys, wasting their weekends obsessing over a game they're not even playing. They find satisfaction and pride in their accomplishments, live their lives, not pretend lives with pretend connections to artificial stars in a made-up spectacle. The harsh truth is that the life of a rabid sports fan, which was me for many years, is a pathetic waste. But the glorious hope is that escape is possible, and you are listening to the how-to manual. Fanhood may have served you at one time, but now is the time to put down the pom-poms and throw away that frilly pink skirt. Welcome to the path of fanhood to manhood. Part 1. Fanhood. Chapter 2. The Drummer Boy Incident. In the fall of 2014, the University of Tennessee volunteer football team faced the Florida Gators under the cloud of a 9-year losing streak. For almost a decade, the Vol faithful had believed this would be the year their loyalty would finally be rewarded. And for almost a decade, they had been wrong. But in 2014, the optimism was justified. The Vols had more talent, more experience, and the home field advantage. Neyland Stadium, a venue as loud and intimidating as any in the country. More than 100,000 fans strong, their deafening roar caused opposing teams' linemen to false start, quarterbacks to stutter, and water boys to wet their pants. But for this special occasion, a visual disruption tactic was added. Instructions went out the week of the game that fans were to color coordinate based on seating. If your ticket is in Section A1, wear orange. Section A2, white. B1, orange. Repeat. If in doubt, consult #CheckerNeyland online. The result was an extension of the stadium's iconic checkerboard end zones all the way through the upper decks. A glorious backdrop for the victory to come. The repeating pattern promised to confuse Florida's receivers. Which way do I run? And when combined with the precise frequency of crowd noise timed at just the right moment, give their place kicker a seizure. As Southeastern Conference battles do, the game proved a defensive chess match. After a scoreless first quarter, Tennessee went up 3-0 with a field goal. Then another extended our lead to 6-0 before the half. At the end of the third quarter, the mighty Vols were leading 9-0. Just 15 minutes more and the miserable streak would be over. 10 years of disappointment, a stadium overflowing with anticipation, on the cusp of release. 9-0 wouldn't be as satisfying as a double-digit blowout, but we'd take a win any way we could get it. Then in the final quarter, having held back the Gator onslaught for 45 minutes of play, our defense blinked. Florida scored a touchdown. The extra point narrowed our lead to 2. While non-ideal, this was acceptable. After 9 losses in a row, a 2-point win wouldn't be the shutout we had hoped for, but a 2-point win would still be a win. Then Florida scored a field goal of their own, taking the lead for the first time. 10-9. Late in the fourth and desperate to score, the Vols had the ball and were driving. Slowly, we made it across midfield with less than 2 minutes left. This would be the championship run, the last-minute victory that fans would relish for years to come. Remember back in 2014 when we hit the sideline bomb in the final seconds? Touchdown, Big Orange! Nothing wrong with a little suspense, so long as all ended well. Our Vols were probably just toying with the Gators, offering a glimmer of hope before sending the team and their fans south with daggers through their reptile hearts. We'd be sure to sing them a consoling favorite as they made their way out of the stadium. It's great to be a Tennessee Vol. I said it's great to be a Tennessee Vol. Maybe today would mark the beginning of a winning streak of our own. We were primed to celebrate and ready to sing. But when a volunteer pass sailed into the hands of a Gator defender, the fantasy came crashing down. Without enough timeouts to force a punt, Florida ran out the clock still ahead by a single point. There were no last-minute Hail Mary, no slow-motion sprint to the end zone, no Big Orange glory to relive the next morning at church. Our stadium noise, our color-coordinated seating, we'd provided a glorious backdrop, all right, for another loss. Our faith that this was the year. All ultimately impotent. The team, the crowd, the entire Vol nation realized that despite our best efforts, we'd just lost to our most hated rival for an entire decade. An entire decade! How could this happen? Again! Was there a fan who hadn't yelled loud enough? Who hadn't concentrated intently enough? Whose faith wasn't strong enough? Florida's class act of a coach, Will Muschamp, who would be fired later that season, gleefully told a sideline reporter, "It's great to see all these people out here getting disappointed. I love it." The Florida band, perhaps following Muschamp's lead, decided to send the brokenhearted home with one last jab. They raised their instruments high and played Rocky Top, our fight song, in our stadium, punctuating what everyone already knew, that the Gators effectively owned our Vols. As he willed himself out of his seat and toward the exit, a dejected Vol fan was coming to terms with a year of loathing ahead. The familiar sting, the shame, the helplessness. Demoralized and angry, he lashed out, elbowing his way through pockets of Gator fans. Out of the way! Out of the way! Just outside the stadium, he barged west along T. Martin Drive. Ahead, he could see the Florida band marching toward their bus, beaming with smugness. On a collision course, he didn't slow, and when he made it to the band that had just played his team's fight song in his stadium, he tantrumed right through the middle of their formation. Out of the way! Out of the way! A Florida drummer took offense. No, you get out of the way. The man snapped. I'll shove those drumsticks up your ass! The never-ending losses had hurt, and we'd have to wait yet another year for our chance to break the streak. But how could a grown man get that upset over a game he wasn't even playing? Upset enough to elbow through groups of strangers? Upset enough to threaten some poor college drummer? I'm ashamed to admit that grown man was me. How did an otherwise respectable professional, a husband and father, allow himself to get that wrapped up, that mad? My breakdown was the crescendo of a toxic fanaticism that had been festering for almost 30 years. Chapter 3. The Battle of New Orleans. Let's briefly rewind to New Year's Day 1986. 8-year-old me and my 5-year-old sister lie on sleeping bags on the living room floor, Mom and Dad behind us on the couch. The horses and chickens fed early. All eyes are on the TV, for it's football time in Tennessee. With almost a month to anticipate the biggest matchup in memory, the entire state is abuzz. The number 8 Vols are fresh off their first Southeastern Conference championship in 16 years and are set to play number 2 Miami in the New Orleans Sugar Bowl. On site, 600 miles south at the Superdome, Vol fans outnumber Miami fans 2-1. My Aunt Dot is among them. When the cameras pan the crowd, my sister tries to catch a glimpse. I think I see her! The fans in orange and white were ready for an upset victory, but the national analysts considered that to be a very unlikely outcome. These scrubs from Knoxville beat the perennially powerful Hurricanes? The same Hurricanes with Heisman Trophy winner quarterback Vinny Testaverde? Not a chance. Back then, the Bulls determined the national champion, and Miami was actually in the running. With a regular season win over number 3 Oklahoma, ABC Sports announcers Frank Broyles and Keith Jackson argued whether the winner of Oklahoma's bowl game against number 1 Penn State or Miami should be declared the national champion. After all, the fact that Miami would beat Tennessee was a foregone conclusion. If Penn State loses, Miami will be the national champion. Do you think Tennessee, with its defense now, can manifest some pressure on Testaverde? Oklahoma could not, Keith. I think for Tennessee to have any chance in this ball game, they gotta roll the dice. They hope to confuse Testaverde, who I think may be the best college passer we've seen in a long, long time. Their analysis made it clear that no one outside the Volunteer state gave our boys a fighting chance. Tennessee fans took this lack of respect personally. In fact, more than 30 years later, many still haven't forgotten. If you find the broadcast on YouTube, there's a comment from a quote Jack Buck that perfectly captures the sentiment. I swear, if Tennessee played the Al-Qaeda child killers, Keith Jackson would be for the child killers. He hated Tennessee. He hated Peyton Manning. He hated everything but Alabama. That's today. But back on New Year's Day 1986, win or lose, Coach Johnny Majors was determined to ensure his Vols would never be overlooked again. His pregame locker room speech turned the team's underdog status into a weapon. Or if you've seen The Waterboy, into tackling fuel. They don't have any respect for you. Make them remember you for as long as they live. The way you hit, the way you knock them downfield, the way you hustle. Attack, attack, attack. Always attack. The team apparently listened. Miami scored a touchdown in the opening quarter, but never again. What about their Heisman Trophy winning quarterback? As the New York Times described it, the Tennessee defense sacked Testaverde 7 times and pressured him on almost every passing play, forced him into 3 fumbles, intercepted Testaverde 3 times, and his replacement once. Our team, our state, our culture vindicated. My family cheered with families all over Tennessee as our Vols stunned the so-called experts and won what would become known locally as the Battle of New Orleans. Final score, 35-7. I thought to myself, man, I'd have given anything to be there, to see the Vols win in person like Aunt Dot. The following year, my dad surprised me with tickets to the UT California game. I still remember how far away we had to park. A mile seems further when you're 10. How loud the crowd was, and how proud Dad seemed to be for taking me. Our Vols didn't disappoint. Cal's Golden Bears went down quietly, and the ticket stubs and pom-poms for my first game, a 38-12 Big Orange win, hung on my bedroom wall for the remainder of my childhood. The seeds of fanhood planted early. My first game mementos would be ever-present reminders that whatever else happened, I was a Vol for life. Chapter 4. 10 miles from Mexico. Fast forward to 1997. I'm at Laughlin Air Force Base, a pilot training station in the Texas desert, charged with maintaining air traffic control tower radios. Much of the Lone Star State is beautiful, but 2.5 hours southwest of San Antonio, I might as well have been on the moon. Grass? What is grass? Do you mean cactus, senor? What are these trees you speak of? Do mesquite bushes count? And in your land, the earth is tall in some places and short in others? Is it not flat? Very odd, this Tennessee, that the blazing furnace of summer produced a dry heat, was little consolation for those of us in battle dress uniforms and combat boots. The air conditioner in the truck we drove to and from the receiver site could hardly keep up. The receiver site was a one-room building beside the landing strip that housed dozens of radio receivers, too many to fit in the tower, each dedicated to a specific frequency. Rather than a plumbed toilet or a porta potty, Uncle Sam saw fit to bless the receiver site with an incinerator commode that would literally burn your poop. The protocol? Do your business, hit flush, run. But the overworked AC and the government-issue Chevy S10 we used to get to and from the site was better than the alternative. Rolling down the window felt like someone was shooting you in the face with a hairdryer. In short, the lush Appalachian foothills I'd taken for granted as a kid, I learned to appreciate them. fast. And I wasn't alone. Airmen from all over the country endorsed Laughlin's unofficial motto, 10 miles from Mexico, 10 feet from hell. Homesick in the age before webcams, every Saturday during football season I was somewhere in front of a TV. I might have been stuck in the desert, but if I sat close enough to the screen for a few hours, I was back home. The sea of orange pouring into the stadium, the pride of the Southland marching band, Rocky Top. I can still hear the trumpets of CBS's militaristic SEC matchup music, the same militaristic SEC matchup music they play today. Dun 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 dun. For a young airman, the Vols weren't only a tie to my desperately missed home, they were a source of self-esteem. There's always a pecking order at work. Sally, Sammy, Tammy, then Fred. In civilian life, you can escape it at the end of the workday. Sally and Fred go their separate ways, and Fred gets a welcome break. However, as any veteran can attest, this is not the case in the military. There are plenty of good things about joining the service. It can be escape from bad influences, an opportunity to learn a trade or mature before college, a chance to make lifelong friends, to see the world, or to simply serve your country. But one downside is that the workplace pecking order isn't exclusive to the workplace. If you're Fred at work, you're Fred everywhere. For your rank is sewn onto your shirt, and everyone lives in the same fenced-in town. There is no escape. That asshole from work is at the gym. He's at the bowling alley, the laundromat, the cafeteria. This has to be 1,000 times worse in the Navy, trapped on a freaking boat. And it's not only the asshole from your work, it's assholes from everybody's work, some of whom think it's their job to reassert their rank wherever you go. They're assholes, you're a lower rank. The military can be a prick's paradise. But my Vols had Peyton freaking Manning. He was breaking passing records and wowing the national media. The same experts who wouldn't give us a chance against Miami in '86 suddenly couldn't kiss our asses hard enough in '96. So I ran with it. Peyton plays for my team, in my state, at my stadium. I flew University of Tennessee flags on my car, decorated the Christmas tree in my dorm with orange lights, and changed into Vol gear as soon as I got off duty each day. Air Force camouflage off, volunteer orange on. This was pretty normal back home. People never questioned why you were wearing such an odd color. But on base, constantly in orange garb and blaring the bluegrass version of Rocky Top, I became the hillbilly with odd fashion sense. Fixing radios for the Air Force was a fantastic way to spend my late teens and early 20s. God knows my stateside peacetime service was cushy. To all the combat vets, thank you for yours. But living in the desert at the bottom of the chain of command tended to suck, and that suckage made me extra vulnerable to sports fanaticism. Self-reflection time. Did your own fanaticism take hold during a similar time? While I liked the Vols beforehand, it was during my time in the military that they became an unhealthy obsession. The team came to represent the best of all I had left back home, and tying my pride to the outcome of their games, which was usually positive during the Manning era, entwined the University of Tennessee athletic department with my very identity. Having seen one too many cacti and being pricked one too many times, I petitioned my commanding officer to transfer to the Tennessee Air National Guard. And in the summer of 1998, I flew home whistling Rocky Top. Chapter 5. Redemption. Despite that Sugar Bowl upset win over Miami and a handful of SEC championships, the Vols were always 2 steps away from true greatness. Peyton had owned Bama, which felt great after the misery of the late 80s. Buck Fama bumper stickers were not uncommon during that time. But for all his divine athleticism, Peyton never beat the Florida Gators. I'd stuck with the team regardless. A Vol for life. My favorite t-shirt said it all. I bleed orange and white. But when I returned from Texas in '98, even though Manning had just left for the NFL, it was magical. Like I, along with thousands of other loyal fans, was finally being rewarded. Instead of the rebuilding year everyone had braced for, it proved to be a season of drama and victory, followed by drama and victory. A pass interference called in the opener against Syracuse that led to a game-saving field goal. Arkansas's quarterback fortuitously fumbling, all by his lonesome, when the game was surely lost, allowing running back Travis Cheese Henry to pound downfield for the win. A sideline bomb against Florida State in the national championship. That's right, my Vols in the national freaking championship. But the memory that outshines the rest. After 5 annual losses, a shameful streak preceding the decade of losses to come, the top 10 Vols had a fighting chance to beat top 10 Florida. The Gators had shut down our beloved Peyton, and it was time for revenge. There was no way I was missing it. I scrounged together $150 for a scalp ticket in the southern end zone upper deck, 3 rows beneath where the Jumbotron sits today. That's right, $150 for a single nosebleed ticket in 1998. High school buddy and roommate Robert, another rabid fan who'd later name his firstborn Neyland after the legendary coach, was in. A back-and-forth defensive grinder, neither team could establish dominance, and at the end of regulation we were tied 17-17. Robert and I had never seen a college game go into overtime. The rule had only been around for 2 seasons. Word passed quickly through the crowd that unlike in the pros, college overtime gives each team the ball on the 25-yard line and a chance to score. If after one rotation a team is leading, they win. If the score is still even, another overtime ensues. The Vols got the ball first. We couldn't reach the end zone, and so opted for a field goal to go up 20-17. Now Florida's turn. They could win with a touchdown. But UT linebacker Al Wilson went into beast mode and said no. When third down became fourth, the Gators needed to match the Vols' field goal to tie the game and force a second overtime. I once weathered a severe hailstorm. Some claimed it was a tornado, in an old farmhouse. As my wife and I huddled in the bathroom with our dogs, it peeled the paint off the siding and laid siege to the tin roof. Can you imagine how loud that must have been? That's how loud Neyland Stadium was as Florida's kicker lined up for the game-tying attempt. If he hits it, we go to a second overtime and risk losing. If he misses, game over. Vols finally win. The fans were in agreement. Let's end this now. Tornado-grade stadium noise commence. 5 years of thwarted hope, 5 years of pent-up frustration, all brought to bear on one play. Correction, on one player. With the deafening roar in the background, here's how the late great Vol sportscaster John Ward called it. The snap, the kick is in the air, and the kick this time is... No, sir-ree. No, sir-ree. Final score, Tennessee 20, Florida 17. Pandemonium reigns. Pandemonium was a good word for it. Thousands of vindicated, many inebriated, fans jumping, hollering, and taunting anyone wearing blue with that full-arm chomp clap Gator fans hold so dear. Orange and white Tasmanian Devils whirlwinding onto the field, dismantling the goalposts, which were stumps by the time Robert and I got there, wildly embracing, pillaging souvenirs. I still have a clump of orange grass commandeered from the end zone, one of the few mementos to survive the Purge we'll soon talk about. From the looks of the field that night, lots of Vol fans do. The chaos spilling into the streets, a group of fans paraded down Cumberland Avenue with a goalpost, where legend has it, they threw it into the Tennessee River. Too many and too wild to contain, campus police wisely allowed the celebration, borderline riot, to run its course. It still gives me goosebumps. Even today, 5 years on the recovery side of Fanhood. An unforgettable night, an unforgettable season. The Vols went undefeated the year I returned home from the Air Force. 13 wins, 0 losses. We couldn't win the big one with the great Peyton Manning, but somehow we were all rewarded for our loyalty the year after he left for the NFL, with our first win over Florida in 5 years, and our first national championship in over 30. And as UT's reputation as a football powerhouse swelled, so did my addiction. Chapter 6, Wyoming. Fast forward a decade. I'm holding my 6-month-old firstborn in one hand and tickets to the 2008 Wyoming game in the other. Sane fathers keep their babies indoors in November, and my wife is, intelligently, encouraging me to reconsider. But I wanted his fanaticism to match mine, and this would lay the foundation. 6 months is old enough for my boy's first blowout win? Just bundle him up, go Vols! The setup was the opposite of the '86 Sugar Bowl. This time, the Vols were the heavy favorite. As the Associated Press put it, Wyoming came in a nearly 4-touchdown underdog, the lowest scoring team in major college football, ranked 111th in total offense and languishing near the bottom of the Mountain West Conference. Needless to say, for an SEC heavyweight like Tennessee, the Cowboys were not a threat. And while a lopsided win might lack dramatic thrills, at least my baby boy would get initiated into the Vol family in style. Or so I thought. While expected to beat lowly Wyoming, the once great Vols had tumbled. They'd been splitting wins with the Gator Menace, even winning 3 of the 4 from 01 through 04. But no longer in the running for SEC championships, let alone national championships. Their overall record wasn't living up to fans' expectations. A vocal sect was sure that head coach Philip Fulmer, who'd brought us the national championship in '98, was to blame, and their calls for his resignation were increasingly louder. If fans could have predicted the misery to come under coaches Kiffin, Dooley, and Jones, and probably Pruitt, who's new and not off to a promising start, 2021 update. Pruitt was just fired. Yikes. They might have given Fulmer another chance. But the Monday before the fateful Wyoming game, the university's athletic director announced Fulmer was being pushed out and would officially step down at the end of the season. A decade later, Fulmer would return as UT's athletic director himself. How's that for a dish served cold? The team did not respond well. To the shock of everyone, probably including the Cowboy players, Wyoming won, and my son's first game at Neyland Stadium was a complete bust. It hurt at the time, but looking back, it was actually a blessing. Chapter 7: The Awakening. While my own dad had taken me to my first Vols game when I was 10, and to see Michael Jordan and the Bulls in an exhibition game when I was 14, he was never crazy about any sports team. He was fond of the Celtics' Larry Bird, but I can't remember him getting upset over a game or putting team stickers on our Clark Griswold station wagon. Not even once. Rather than attaching his happiness to the fortune of athletic strangers, he had a competitive outlet of his own, showing horses. While teenage strangers in orange were losing to teenage strangers in crimson every October, the third Saturday traditionally reserved for the UT-Bama game, Dad was adding trophies and ribbons to the barn's tackroom display. Through his upkeep of the farm, training, and competing on Pepper, a muscle-bound black stallion who brought us an amateur world grand championship in 1978, he, and Mom, who also competed, provided an example of how to get your kicks directly through personal challenge, adventure, and growth. He didn't cheer for others. Others cheered for him. My kids, on the other hand, had the opposite experience, a front row ticket to the shameful underbelly of sports fanaticism. An irate, irritable, sullen dad, complete with the shouting, pouting, and powerless attachment to events over which I had no control. Hyping whatever matchup the Vols happened to be playing days in advance. Come game time, I'd don an old number 16 jersey, shove pom-poms in their hands, turn the TV up as loud as it would go, and proceed to model various forms of immature foolishness. A prime example of how not to live an authentic, meaningful life. By the time I offered that Florida drummer a creative enema in 2014, sorry dude, existential meltdown. I had consumed hundreds of hours of games and spent thousands of hours listening to sports talk, reading articles, polishing team memorabilia, reinforcing precisely how my kids shouldn't spend their limited time on this wondrous planet. Team bibs, team pacifiers, team stickers on their baby swings, the indoctrination unfortunately worked. Though they rebounded from losses more easily, my kids learned to love the players, to hate their rivals, and accepted the team's identity as a part of their own. As a toddler, our oldest would spontaneously sing Rocky Top at Walmart. At the time, this made me proud. 8 years after the Wyoming loss, it took the 10th in a row loss against Florida followed by a public meltdown for me to realize how absorbed I had become, and how much of a waste sports fanaticism is. The fact that I'd be going home to my family in a funk, a completely avoidable funk that they didn't deserve, pushed me to confront the truths I'd been suppressing. Real men weren't in the stands that day, their esteem at the mercy of the outcome. They were on the field playing, or coaching, or somewhere else achieving their goals, doing their thing. How had I been so stupid for so long? Being a fan was a welcome distraction when I was a young buck in the Air Force. Watching the team succeed and feeling like I was somehow a part of it was a fun fantasy when I needed one. But I was an adult now, living a real life with real responsibilities. It was past time to put away childish things. Plus, for all the good times, when things went wrong for the team, they tended to go really wrong. And even when they went right, why the hell was I celebrating? Why was I gloating? What made me think wearing the same colors as the men competing entitled me to credit or blame for their success or failure? Millions are just as consumed and misguided. And there are strong psychological drivers behind the craze that the multi-billion-dollar sports industry knows how to exploit. Oh, you thought we just naturally fell into fanhood? Nope. Sports fan psychology is a serious discipline, and marketers know exactly how to use their findings to make us watch more, care more, spend more. I drugged my family through 8 more years of fanhood after the Wyoming loss, and that 10th loss to Florida was not fun. But the embarrassment of the outburst that followed was precisely the shock I needed. Luckily, you don't have to repeat it, for the further I walked from the scene of the meltdown, the clearer the truth became. Part 2. Puberty. Chapter 8. The Talk. We need to have a little talk. The awkward bottom line is this. Fans are essentially cheerleaders, and cheerleading is not manly. Competing is. The brawn-on-brawn battle, the athletic excellence, the discipline, the sacrifice, the perseverance. If you're actually on the field, in the arena, great. But for the rest of us, playing dress-up in our cute team colors, rah-rah-rahing, gloating when we win, whining and moaning when we lose, prancing around in our hero's jersey. Number 16's my favorite. He's the best. Screaming when he screws up. Throw the ball. Why can't you just throw it? Is this the behavior of real men? Of course not. Now, I know what you're thinking. But I'm loyal. Loyalty is manly. Only punks abandon their team, right? Wrong. Punks switch teams. Men release the foolishness of team idolatry altogether. Loyalty talk is just a cult retention tactic. Another way the sports marketing vampires keep their customers, which is all we are to them, ignorant, subdued, and spending. I suppose if you're going to be a cheerleader, cheering for strangers in the same outfit is better than cheering for whichever strangers happen to be winning. But we are not, nor do we aspire to be, cheerleaders. But my team needs me. No, your team doesn't know who you are, and they don't care. Your pretend relationship with Tom Brady or Conor McGregor or LeBron James is sad. Acting as if your cheers have anything to do with their success is pathetic. Somehow grown men, including me, have been tricked into thinking it's cool and macho to walk around in public in sports stars' jerseys. Where I come from, wearing a player's jersey in high school meant you were dating. If you really are dating Tony Romo, good for you. But if you're not, reconsider your dignity. Unlike most fans, I actually had a slight connection to the Vols. I hold 4 degrees from the University of Tennessee. I wrote most of my dissertation in a graduate student office in the belly of Neyland Stadium, 20 yards from where I threatened that poor Florida drummer. I didn't just go to UT, I taught there. I taught players. Saints Super Bowl winning wide receiver Robert Meacham, basketball guard now playing pro in Brazil Cam Tatum, linebacker turned coach at Albany State Nick Reveiz, son of NFL place kicker and local sports commentator Fod Reveiz. Nick could bench press a horse with one hand and write an A-grade essay with the other. All of them fine men, all winners in their own right. Former football coach Phil Fulmer and basketball coach Bruce Pearl visited classes I was teaching to guest speak, Fulmer twice. I shook their hands, took pictures with them, got autographs. Me and Phil even emailed a bit. For a cheerleader, it was quite the thrill. Fulmer was a gentleman. Pearl, nice enough. But I'm sure both saw me for the fanboy schmuck I was. How could they not? It's hard to respect a man when he's gushing all over you. It's hard for a doer to see a cheerer as equal. Okay, quick timeout. It should be obvious that comparing fans to cheerleaders is actually too generous. Real cheerleaders are legit athletes, bear grueling practice schedules, perform under the harshest of conditions, often compete at elite levels, and execute gymnastic moves most of us couldn't touch in our prime. Fans, on the other hand, stand and yell at best. So real cheerleaders, do your thing. Okay, time back in. If a genuine friend or family member actually coaches or plays for your team, go ahead, paint your face, trash up your car, pout after a big loss. Boy, did I pout after big losses. But I'm willing to bet you have no real connection. Maybe you live in the same state or the same city, or maybe you share the same school. But that's a weak basis for the mouth-foaming devotion sports fans are encouraged to show. Our families, our friends, our good neighbors, these are the people who deserve our loyalty. Strangers who play with balls? No. For college sports fans in particular, this doesn't mean we shouldn't be proud of or stop supporting our alma maters. I still am and still do. All it means is that when strangers play a made-up game, regardless of where they play it, it has nothing to do with us. Their performance is theirs. Our performance is ours. The two are not intertwined. Cheering for a sports team used to make you feel edgy. Somehow, as if by magic, the power and success of the team transferred to anyone who rooted for them. No matter how many thousands of fans pretend along with us, the machismo we once drew from our misplaced idols was never real. Manliness by association is not a thing. So say it with me. The more passionate the fan, the more flamboyant the cheerleader. Tacky, but true. To recap, being a loyal fan isn't honorable, it's pathetic. Punks switch teams, cheerleaders stick with their team, and real men don't cheer for ball-playing strangers in the first place. Obvious, yet forbidden truths. Truths that hurt. But admitting them is key. Chapter 9. Fan Brainwashing 101. If we had to teach a class on how to brainwash sports fans, maybe a class for rookie sports marketers, we wouldn't have any trouble finding source material. Psychologists have been hard at work cracking the sports fan's psyche for decades, and they haven't been shy about sharing their findings with the industry. As you review the following examples of how sophisticated and devious sports marketing has become, reflect on how many of these techniques your own team has used to brainwash you. Exhibit A. Creating and fostering fan identification in professional sports. From Sports Marketing Quarterly, Volume 6, Number 1. Yes, Sports Marketing Quarterly is a thing. There were 5 volumes before this one in 1997, and it's still in print today. This foundational gem is chock full of proven, science-backed techniques for hooking and deepening the emotional investment of sports fans. Take strategy number 1, for example. Link the team to the community's traditions, landmarks, and history. The expression of common symbols, history, shared goals, and the fans' need to belong links the team to the community and provides an identity for the team that is inseparable from that of the community. As an embodiment of the community, a fan's affinity for his or her community is associated and extended to the team. Of course, teams don't deserve this extended affinity. The players are strangers, and in many cases not even from the communities they pretend to represent. But if the UT marketing department can convince the Vols to charge onto the field carrying the Tennessee state flag, if they can give ESPN footage of the Great Smoky Mountains or Tennessee walking horses to run between commercial breaks, if they can convince announcers to call the Vols Tennessee rather than the Vols, well, homesick airmen will be more likely to believe that the strangers in orange are an extension of the family and culture they love and miss so much. The propaganda usually goes unnoticed, probably because we want it to be true. If, in a moment of clarity, a Crimson Tide fan wonders why the University of Alabama football team is referred to as Bama rather than the University of Alabama football team, he likely doesn't wonder for long. After all, why not pretend the team's excellence is a reflection of the excellence embodied by his entire state? In fact, why not pretend the team's excellence is a reflection of his own excellence? This fantasy that a team's achievements are our achievements is especially dangerous. Which leads us to strategy number 2. Encourage fans to confuse the player's performance with their own. Fans look to sport as a means of belonging. Teams should strive to promote this sense of belonging and affiliation. Teams need to communicate the fact that the fans are part of the team, that this is their team, and that we compete together as a unit. There it is in black and white. Explicit direction to blur the line between competitor and spectator. The locker room interviews, behind the scenes mini documentaries, overt we talk from announcers and promotions, all designed to hitch your identity to their revenue stream. Does it work? Have you ever caught yourself saying, "We sure whooped Georgia Saturday," or "Our pitching was wicked killer against the Mets"? Yeah, me too. When we've indulged in the we talk that the industry so enthusiastically encourages, it's evidence of what the sports fan psychologists call basking in reflected glory, or burging. Burging not only lets us pretend that our team's awesomeness equates to our personal awesomeness, Its tendency to happen in public adds the allure of feeling like we're part of a clan. Imagine you're in Austin at the 7-Eleven during Oklahoma week. The cashier notices your UT, University of Texas, the other UT, hat and gives an approving nod. Then Wednesday, Bob from accounting sees your burnt orange tie and throws up a hook 'em horns gang sign. Then Sunday, you're buying pickles at Walmart, and some stranger puts his arm around you, starts talking about how we pulled it out in the fourth against those dirty Sooners. Before you know it, you're high-fiving, fist-bumping, inviting him to meet your mom. Remember, it's a marketing trick. Just because everyone around us pretends we talk is legit doesn't make it so. We didn't do jack. Win, lose, or draw, they competed, not us. Take credit for your accomplishments, not the accomplishments of strangers. If you're going to claim a clan, make it one you actually deserve. Strategy number 3. Present flamboyant cheerleading not only as normal, but admirable, enviable, cool. Have you ever seen an overly absorbed fan and thought, damn, that guy needs to get a life? That guy's image is suppressed for a reason. In case you haven't realized it, in someone's eyes at some point, that guy was you and me. To keep the profits flowing, not only does the industry need to keep us convinced that the team's fate equals our own, but the myth that cheerleading is honorable and manly has to be constantly defended. As the fan psychologist put it, marketing communication should reinforce and display positive group behaviors of attending an event and following a team, as well as positive attributes of the fan group. Again, fans want to be associated with positive others. If the followers of a team are perceived in a positive way, more fans will be attracted to the fan group, and in turn, the team. Whether it's an ad for beer or satellite TV, the ideal sports fan is rugged, successful, and fit enough to jump in and play wide receiver, or at least place kicker, should coach need him. They'll occasionally mix in a weirdo for comic relief, but what you'll rarely see are the outbursts, the weekends robbed of meaning, the dreams and loved ones neglected in pursuit of the worship of their product. The ultimate fanhood is cool trick happens when athletes are portrayed as fans. Charles Barkley obsesses over his March Madness bracket. Joe Montana frets his fantasy football lineup. Athletes are fans, so fans are athletes, right? Wrong. Sports stars are sports stars precisely because they've not wasted their lives cheering rather than doing. The industry encourages the confusion for a simple reason. The more diluted we are, the more money we'll spend and the longer we'll suffer alongside a team that's struggling. In essence, when sports marketers do their jobs, we're more broke and less happy. 3 cheers for the sports marketers! Given that most franchises aren't perennial champions, how to keep us watching and spending during a slump is of special interest to the industry, which leads us to Exhibit B, a fancy-worded study targeting fans of an unnamed university in the South. If it wasn't so devious, all their big-brained attention might be flattering. The Latin Moderated Structural Equations procedure, LMS, was used to examine the moderation effect of identification with the team. Results indicate that sports consumers' behavioral intention significantly differed based on game outcome. After a win, consumer emotions were related to both types of satisfaction, i.e., game and service. And game satisfaction mediated the relationship between emotions and behavioral intention. Consumer emotions resulting from a loss, however, did not influence service satisfaction. These findings can help sport organizations understand the emotion satisfaction behavior process of sports consumers and design appropriate recovery strategies, such as allocating resources and effort to deliver the highest level of ancillary services to help consumers cope after core service failure. What I think they're saying is that most fans won't abandon ship after core service failure, aka a string of losses, so long as they're pacified with ancillary services, aka the crap the first study recommended. Your team equals your community. And we're in this together propaganda. And they're right. Real fans of bad teams will not only stick by them, they'll wear their suffering as a badge of honor. I've flown team flags on my car after a big loss to thumb my nose at fans of the winning team, but to also show those less committed what a true fan looks like. If Metallica had to describe this in a song, James Hetfield would bellow, "Sad but true." Even sadder, some fans seem to actually prefer it when their team loses. Losing fuels feelings of superiority over the coaches and gives fans an excuse to piss and moan on social media. "That coach doesn't know what he's doing. Fire that bum." When others agree, it reinforces the solidarity of the cheer tribe, even if it's become a bitter, miserable cheer tribe. Rather than doubling down or joining in on the bitching, Some fans will eventually distance themselves from losses by cutting off reflective failure, or corfing. The usual we talk becomes they talk, as in, they didn't play worth a damn Sunday. This is understandable in light of just how hard some fans take big losses. I've been there. But too much corfing scares the industry. To deter it, they've developed techniques to turn marginal fans into committed supporters, and committed supporters into rabid fanatics. In fact, there's an official fan involvement ladder developed by psychology professor Daniel Wan at Murray State University in Kentucky. The progression is suspect to prospect, to customer to client, to member to advocate to raving fan. For strategies on how to move fans up this ladder, look no further than Exhibit C, a study by researchers from the Universities of Oregon and Louisville on how to turn passive fans into big spenders, and big spenders into lifelong cultists. For the bubbliest of cheerleaders, this is probably you, so pay attention. The idea is to never allow them to doubt their fanhood, and to milk them for all they're worth. Because they are so valuable to the team, marketers want to avoid a situation in which highly loyal fans would decrease their behavior or reconsider their allegiance to their favorite team. The objective is to progressively increase the yield from these best consumers. That's right, block fanhood to manhood transformations in order to progressively increase yield. That's how you're truly thought of and treated. You're not a member or a contributor. You're worth nothing more than your purchasing power, and treated pretty much the same way dairy farmers treat cows. For fans who attend games but aren't emotionally dependent enough, the experts recommend highlighting the team's tradition, or its first-rate treatment of patrons. And if all else fails, feign support for a social cause. A team, for example, that demonstrates its commitment to helping battered women by pledging a portion of each ticket sold to fund or construct a new shelter provides the spuriously loyal fan one more important reason to care about the organization and to attend games. For frugal fans, make purchases easier with entry-level products like mini-season ticket packages. And for the dreaded low-loyalty fan, try luring them in by offering packages to various groups, e.g., families, businesses. By attracting families, teams not only entice thrifty dads to open their wallets, but they lay the foundation for little Timmy's adulthood addiction. How? Enmeshing a boy's memory of a team with memories of a family will make questioning fanhood later in life tantamount to questioning grandpa. One commentator from Penn State put it like this: interestingly, there is an overwhelmingly structured path to becoming a sports fanatic. The introduction usually occurs around the age of 8 or 9, when children become very susceptible to long-term emotional attachment. Understandably, the strongest influences of sports teams' attachment come from the immediate family or friends. Thinking about this makes it clear that sports industry tries to capture children very early by attracting families and investing in people's loyal fandom. Funny, my first fanhood memory is watching the Vols take on the Hurricanes in the '86 Sugar Bowl with my parents and sister, looking for my Aunt Dot in the crowd on TV. I was 8. The next, the '87 UT California matchup at Neyland Stadium with my dad at age 10. No wonder by the time I left for the Air Force, the Vols felt like family. No wonder that 20 years later, I was a co-conspirator in my own kids' brainwashing. On top of dressing them in cutesy team garb, plastering team stickers on their crib, and taking them to the games, I enrolled them in UT's Junior Vols Kids Club. Membership included free tickets to everything but football games, the department's primary breadwinner. Team-themed art projects. I remember my oldest filling a plastic football statuette with orange and white sand. And team mascot coloring books. As the website pitches today, join the fun and connect with your favorite team in a fun and engaging way. This isn't isolated or unique. When I took my kids to a Nationals baseball game in DC, they were awarded a free pack of baseball cards and a first game certificate to hang in their bedrooms. Nashville's Titans have a kids club. More events, more fun, as do most NFL teams. The Bulls have a Chicago Bulls Kid Nation, affiliated with the NBA's Junior NBA program. Your old team probably does something similar. To their credit, some programs include youth camps where kids get the chance to actually play sports rather than simply watch. But the ultimate financial motivation is clear. Public relations and social media strategist Victoria Shelton explained it well in Developing Diehards, the Power of Marketing Sports to Children. While the short-term goal of these programs is to boost attendance and increase revenue sales, the long-term goal is to help create lifelong fans who will support the team for years to come. By offering special promotions and giveaways to entice fans when they are young, Sports marketers are instilling a love of the team in these kids that will only grow as they continue to grow. And Kenneth Courtson, a sports business researcher, put it like this: these examples provide perfect ways to build emotional equity with the youngest fan groups, and thus with the long-term fans of the club. This is a great way to secure future revenue streams. It looks like the sports industry has taken a few lessons from Big Tobacco. Philip Morris also understood that a customer at 10 is a customer for life. Reflect on your own fanhood memories. Does your childhood keep popping up? Family? That's no accident. Exhibit D! A 2013 paper co-written by researchers in Minnesota and Portugal on spectator-based brand equity. Results gathered from a confirmatory factor analysis indicated an acceptable fit of the model to the data and confirmed the relationship between internalization, a single first-order construct, and brand associations, a second-order construct with 10 dimensions. Review of the psychometric properties indicated all constructs had good internal consistency, convergent validity, and discriminant validity. Second-order constructs with 10 dimensions? Psychometric properties and discriminant validity? Guys, when I say the industry isn't fooling around, they're really not fooling around. The literature is rife with jargon-filled research just like this, furthering marketers' understanding of how to reel us in and keep us hooked. They've clocked hundreds of thousands of hours figuring out how to make us care and spend more, with little concern for whether it's good for us, our families, or our communities. Chariot race fanatics in ancient Rome had only themselves to blame. But today, nobody passively slips into fanhood. We're targeted, kidnapped, and waterboarded with Go Team Kool-Aid until we eventually succumb. Maybe it's not that dramatic. But sports fan psychology really is a thing, and your team's marketing department really has been using it against you, likely from a young age. Let the fact that you have an old and active enemy inspire perseverance as you begin the next crucial step: the Purge. Chapter 10. The Purge. I need you to get your team garbage away from your person and out of your sight ASAP. Disentangling the team's identity from your identity begins with changing the clothes on your back, the stickers on your car, even the background on your phone. If you're like I was, burning it on the spot isn't an option. Too much emotion and money, that crap was expensive, invested to just trash it. So baby steps are fine, but we need all those reminders of your past addiction away from you now. This can be tough. The memories and the fabricated sense of belonging make the sports fan's addiction intimate. But if I could do it, you can do it. After the drummer boy incident, I put all of my Vols crap in a box and relegated it to the garage. The shirts, the hats, even the paraphernalia. The limited edition tailgate party cast iron 39 Ford complete with Smokey Dog mascot, cooler and grill, the Neyland Stadium replica, the game day cup with dozens of tickets from all the games I'd wasted my time and money on, complete with the '98 Florida game victory, a victory that had absolutely nothing to do with me, end zone grass at the bottom. All of it, in a box, straight to the garage. I didn't actually get rid of anything until months later. Most of it I eventually gave to nephews, though I should have sent it to the dump. You don't see recovering crackheads gifting old pipes to their sisters' kids. But whatever you choose to do with your team trinkets, we need them out of sight, out of mind, now. Further, I hereby declare your gaudy, overpriced, officially licensed team clothing part of a cheerleading uniform, and wearing it the same as wearing a pink cheerleading skirt. Quick timeout. Hopefully the emphasis on cheerleaders and skirts is resonating, but if it's not, hang with me. I needed to make fanhood as unattractive as possible to self-cure, and the skirt thing was a big part of it. But as you'll soon find out, there's much more to the process. Just as the military molds new recruits, first we tear down, then we build up. Time back in. Pretending along with the rest of society that a cartwheel just ain't a cartwheel unless everyone can see your bloomers, short skirts are the quintessential element of cheerleading attire. Intentionally effeminate and flirtatious. My wife was a cheerleader, and I love to see her in a skirt. However, I do not aspire to be a cheerleader, and neither do you. Shaking pom-poms is the opposite of the fanhood fantasy, yet much closer to the truth. So to make it as real and repulsive as possible, team gear equals a pink skirt. Your $100 Red Wings jersey, beat-up Duke cap with a hologram sticker, Seahawks sweatshirt your cousin gave you, regardless of the cost or connections, putting on anything and everything team branded immediately causes a pink cheerleading skirt to appear around your waist. Neither the success of the franchise, nor the price of the item, nor the story behind it diminishes this fact. Team gear equals pink skirt. Just as Fat Albert couldn't keep wearing his "Hey, I'm hard to kidnap" t-shirt and expect to grow a six-pack, you can't keep wearing your old team gear and expect to beat Fanhood. You have to change your outward appearance before you can change your inner self. So in a box, to the garage, or the back of a closet, now. Chapter 11. Taking Stock. The same weekend of my purge, I decided I needed to further distance myself from the program. No disrespect to the players and coaches who'd been putting in the work, doing the manly competing thing. But as a fan, thanks to Urban Meyer, Tim Tebow, bad calls and tough breaks, one game, the Florida game, had hurt worse than the rest. This made 05 through 2014 an especially rough decade. Each annual loss came with the dread that we wouldn't get another chance to beat them for 364 days. Another year of having to put up with local Gator fans gloating. Gloating that was not only childish and sissified, but completely unearned for them as well. Another year of wondering, in vain, when the horrid streak would end. As the years added up, the embarrassment took its toll. You start to develop an inferiority complex, a completely undeserved inferiority complex, but a complex nonetheless. There had been a time in my life when being a fan was a decent gamble. Being an airman in the desert often sucked, and living through Peyton Manning, as pathetic as this was, made that suckage tolerable. But I had grown up, started a family, accomplished a few things. Did fanhood as a source of esteem still make sense? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I'd been quietly kicking butt, so I typed up a comparison table to make the distinction clearer. In the first column, I wrote the year. In the second column, what the Vols did. And in the third column, what I had done. Year 2005. Vols lost to the Gators. Me graduated college summa cum laude. Year 2006. Vols lost to the Gators. Me taught my first college class. Year 2007. Vols lost to the Gators. Me earned a master's degree. Year 2008. Vols lost to the Gators. Me became a dad. Year 2009. Vols lost to the Gators. Me founded an ethics bowl. Year 2010. Vols lost to the Gators. Me became a part-time comedy club host. Year 2011. Vols lost to the Gators. Me fathered a daughter, celebrated 10 years of marriage, earned a PhD. Year 2012. Vols lost to the Gators. Me became a presidential management fellow, worked for the Congressional Research Service on Capitol Hill. Year 2013. Vols lost to the Gators. Me published my first book. Year 2014. Vols lost to the Gators. Me acquired land for my family's forever home. I prefer to call it our terminal residence, but my wife does not. Approaching 40, I wasn't a rock star, but I wasn't a homesick kid anymore either. Continuing to tie my happiness to a sports team was especially foolish in light of all I'd done and was doing. But even if I hadn't been kicking butt, even if you haven't been kicking butt, make your own list now and see. All the time and energy I'd spent obsessing over a team could have been spent planning and living my life, building memories of my big plays. You'd think I would have figured this out before 37. But that Sugar Bowl win when I was a boy, the reinforcement during my time in the Air Force, and especially the national championship when I came home in '98, had me sucked in deep. The marketing ploys probably hadn't hurt. The scary thing is, had that Gators losing streak not reached the magic number of 10, I'd almost certainly still be asleep. Even worse, I would have indoctrinated my kids beyond rescue, gifting the industry 3 long-term revenue streams and setting them up for far less satisfying lives. If your former team has blessed you with a losing streak, be glad. Not all fans are so lucky. If they're currently winning, escape will be tougher. But you can do it, and understanding the true purpose of spectator sports will make the breakup easier. Chapter 12. All about the Benjamins. Whether it's the NCAA, NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, NASCAR, UFC, MLS, or any of the hundreds of soccer football leagues around the world, damn, those soccer fans get crazy. PGA, are there rabid golf fans? Or any other hyper-monetized spectator sport, fans are revenue sources, plain and simple. We are customers, and the entertainment, as well as the sad sense of belonging teams provide, is the product. You saw in our sports psych research expose how fans are to be wooed up the psychological commitment to team scale. The craziest among us carefully courted in order to, quote, progressively increase yield. Bonus fan bucks milked from our team-colored teats. Our children treated as long-term investments, groomed for harvest. Mr. Burns ain't got nothing on sports marketers. Additional clues that it's all about the Benjamins. Officially licensed Christmas ornaments, bottle openers, and bras. As one Auburn exec said to another, will War Eagle fit on it? Trademark that sucker and triple the price. Ticketing schemes that require a donation before you can buy. Doesn't the mob do this? $7 hot dogs and $5 Cokes. From what I recall from the, now demolished, Georgia Dome and Nationals Park in DC, price gouging on beer is even worse. Oh, and parking. Ridiculously expensive parking. Smoke and mirrors slow motion promo footage, similar to ads you'd see for tactical flashlights, or BMWs, or any other material thing for sale. Dave Chappelle once did a skit on how slow motion makes everything look cooler, including laundry. That militaristic music overlaying slow-mo tackle breaks and headers for the win? It's a marketing ploy. Stop falling for it. We could add annual branding catchphrases. Team 121, or It's Time, or Ray Lewis is innocent, we swear. Or announcers introducing your Seattle Seahawks, your Pittsburgh Penguins, or your whatever. Unless you're Jerry Jones at a Cowboys game, sit down, it's a trick. Exception, Packers shareholders. This one minor point doesn't apply to you. I suppose they technically are your Packers, but everyone else, sit down. Or the fact that college athletes still aren't fairly compensated for their sweat, commitment, and sacrifice. Once they learn to collectively bargain, the NCAA is in for a rude awakening. Then there are product endorsements. Legend has it that Shaq snubbed Wheaties and signed a deal with Fruity Pebbles because he only pitches products he actually uses. Thanks to buddy Matt White for sharing the legend, and to Cosmo Frank at Esquire for confirming it in his 2015 interview. Whether Shaq makes a point to cruise the beach in a well-insured red convertible with a cartoon general reeking of Icy Hot, I leave for you to decide. But see if you can keep from imagining the car insurance general giving Shaq an icy hot massage now that I've introduced the idea. Ooh, that's the spot, General. Right there. Before the scandals broke out, we'd regularly see Tiger Woods professing his love for Buicks. Buicks? Play like Tiger, not a chance. Drive like Tiger, no problem. Yeah, no problem if you can afford a C-Class Mercedes. No way Tiger Woods is jaunting to his mistress's houses in a mid-range GM. 2021 update. I was sad to see Tiger involved in a Los Angeles car crash in February, and wish him a fast and full recovery. But I must admit scouring news reports for the vehicle make and model, which turned out not to be a Buick. Concussions, doping, recruiting scandals? Commissioners, owners, and athletic directors look the other way so long as the money keeps flowing. Deflect and distract seems the strategy of choice. To be clear, there's nothing wrong with running a business. Businesses are great. Yay, entrepreneurship! Just don't suffer the illusion that professional sports, and in most ways collegiate sports, are anything more. But maybe you're okay with this. Psh, so what? Apple's a business and I love Apple. If my team is a business, who cares? I enjoy shiny new things too. But life's too short to spend it chasing the latest Xbox or Yeti cooler. My kids will eventually insist we upgrade, but for now, the old school Nintendo Wii is plenty fun enough. And $300 for a cooler? Unless you're transporting human hearts, the $30 Coleman will do. Confession. I have a thing for old Cadillac Coupe de Villes. My first car was a 1975 model. I drove an 84 in the Air Force, on which I flew those silly orange flags. And I own a 77 now, a college graduation gift from Dad. A convertible 60s model is in the 10-year plan, but I don't worship Cadillac. I don't plan my schedule around their product releases or base my self-esteem on how highly the brand is ranked by J.D. Power. It's a company, and their execs couldn't care less about me. Plus, Cadillac stopped making DeVilles over a decade ago. So screw those guys. It's the same with sports. Down at the fans level, it's easy to forget that it's neither glory, nor pride, nor love of the game truly driving the spectacle. It's the almighty dollar. But what about Mark Cuban? Being a Dallas fan is different. Our owner's a fan just like us. We're one big family. Mark Cuban may dress and behave like a typical non-billionaire Mavs fan, but he's not some random rich dude in jeans and a t-shirt. Cuban hires the coach. He negotiates the players' salaries. He buys the training equipment, recruits the team doctor, approves the shoes. Mark Cuban's among the few people who actually deserve to get excited about the Mavs win. Plus, the more excited he looks, the more validated his customers feel. Validated customers equals more merchandise, and ticket sales equals more cha-ching. If Mr. Cuban happens to care about his players, good for him. If he wants the honorable citizens of Dallas to be happy, great. But he's a businessman, and a darn good one from what I've seen on Shark Tank. There's nothing wrong with an owner getting excited about those extra millions flowing into their bank account, especially when their team's success really is a reflection of their own personal efforts, and especially when showing that excitement will boost profits even more. Just don't use an owner's legitimate passion to rationalize mere customers. Chapter 13. Bring it on. So team gear is the same as a cheerleading uniform. Team trinkets are akin to crack pipes, and above the players, above the coaches, above the managers lie greedy execs and athletic directors in smoke-filled rooms plotting next season's merchandising push. At their sides are sports fan psychologists revealing the latest research on how to seduce little Johnny and convince you to put this book down and turn on the game. Painful truths, I know. But you're getting used to them, so let's crank reality up another notch. Ever see Bring It On? From what I've caught, it's about snotty cheerleaders insulting one another. Arrogant, petty, looking for a catfight where one needn't be. Where had I seen this behavior before? Oh yeah, in the mirror! The next time you see a man strutting around in team gear, imagine those sassy cheerleaders, taunting and flaunting. The difference is that the Bring It On cheerleaders competed in a dance-off, whereas fans don't actually do anything. Hey, repping my team is like being in a gang. Yes, a slothful, whiny, sensitive gang that prances around and gloats. A gang that gets extra gloaty after a big play, flashing their best na-na-na-na-boo-boo taunts at opposing fans. See how awesome my players are? Take that! There's this post-win chant I'm ashamed to admit I've sung many times, usually directed at an outnumbered group of the other team's fans. It's great to be a Tennessee Vol. I said it's great to be a Tennessee Vol. That's right, it's great to be a Tennessee Vol. A catchy tune. Maybe you've sung something similar. Come on, how have we been fooled into thinking this is acceptable or that fans have anything to brag about in the first place? The men who struggled and triumphed had every reason in the world to be proud, even when they lost. Hopefully when they won, they could do it with class. But in any case, their fans simply happened to be wearing the same colored outfits. This is supposed to magically transfer their victory onto us. How? But it's a clan thing, you say. We fans are a tough bunch. If you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. Whatever. I once saw a drunk Alabama fan outside Neyland yelling at Vol fans after a tied loss. It was on the back side of the stadium, along the road that loops left toward the Sun Sphere, where Knoxville stockpiles wigs, according to The Simpsons. Nobody did a thing. Old Alabama boy was cursing and calling one particular Vol fan a fat ass, doing his best to get him to fight. Uninterested, his target just wanted to go home, but the drunk guy wouldn't let it go. None of the hundreds of fellow Vol fans walking by stepped in to defend this guy's victim, including me. So much for the "we're a gang, nobody messes with us" myth. Nothing more than a bluff. European soccer hooligans, you're excused from this particular critique, but not the others. Maybe, just maybe, that was that Bama fan's drummer boy incident. Maybe on the long ride back to Tuscaloosa, he reflected on how ridiculous he had been, how he and the man he was accosting could have been friends, and how his life could mean so much more than worship of a sports franchise. But I doubt it. If he stuck with the team just a little longer, he's enjoyed all of those SEC and national championships, probably feeling like I did in '98 when UT won it all after years of frustration. Nick Saban has taken Bama on one heck of a ride. Except for that last-second missed field goal return loss to Auburn. Ouch. It would be hard not to get sucked in given the team's extraordinary success. But surely a guy upset enough to pick fights with strangers had dreams he was sidelining. I sure did. If you're Saban or one of his 5-star studs, then more power to you. But grown men who have nothing to do with the program? Wake up. We're better than that. I was recently waiting out a layover at the Houston airport and overheard one pinstripe cheerleader yell to another, "Let's go Yankees!" How sweet. A prissy braggart reunion. And within earshot of Astros fans. Not to mention Sox fans who might have been traveling through. I remember those days, flaunting my colors so fearlessly. I had this orange t-shirt with 2 words on the front, 2 on the back. The front, "Hey Spurrier." The back, "Up yours." Steve Spurrier, nationally known simply as the head ball coach, was UF's football coach at the time, notoriously antagonistic, and notoriously good. I wore that classless shirt to Florida games even after Spurrier retired, and then to South Carolina games when he unretired to coach the Gamecocks. I also wore it to Pensacola Beach at the height of his run with the Gators. Such a brave cheerleader, donning my most scandalous skirt so deep behind enemy lines. The puffed up boastfulness, the spite, the artificial division, not cool or manly, but far too common. I recently passed a Clemson fan on the Laurel Falls Trail in the Smoky Mountains. Clemson was awful a decade ago, but they're actually good now, good enough to humble the mighty Alabama program. So this guy would have something to be proud of, were he a coach or a player. You could see the tension between him and fans repping other teams, some from Georgia, some from Alabama, probably one from Notre Dame. I actually don't remember seeing an Irish fan, but given their ubiquity, it's a safe bet. For some reason, cheerleaders from all over just have to wear their favorite skirt anytime they venture into Tennessee for a hike. Boys, let's just chill and enjoy the outdoors, alright? The gang brotherhood thing is made up and stupid and fake. If you need a safe outlet to rebel, I feel ya, but let's find a better way. Whatever your old skirt colors, there are reasons why you allowed the sports media industrial complex to sink its fangs into your soul. Our culture says it's normal, honorable, even patriotic, but nobody gets that wrapped up in fanhood unless there are additional drivers at play. My guess is that it's something you're suppressing, something you're avoiding, something you know you need to be doing but have been using fanhood to avoid. A little insight into what that thing is will help you overcome the madness. I therefore summon the ghost of Sigmund Freak Nasty Freud. Chapter 14. Freud said, what? Freud, the guy who said you have the hots for your mom, taught us that our subconscious minds drive our conscious behavior. And usually, according to Freud, our subconscious minds are thinking about sex. That 60s model convertible caddy I want, something to do with sex. Your job? Sex. That smartphone upgrade you're itching to pull the trigger on? That's sex too. Freud was a horn dog. If you're skirt deep in fanhood, there's a reason for it. Maybe it's sex. But most modern psychologists reject Freud's overemphasis on the pleasures of the flesh, arguing human psyches are more complex. Though only slightly. Sex. Are you using sports fanaticism as an excuse to drink? To eat garbage? A way to avoid a suppressed dream? This was part of my problem, as you'll soon hear. If your team wins a championship, will that prove to Missy that she shouldn't have rejected you in the 3rd grade when she found out you picked your nose and wiped it on the back of the school bus seat? Sorry I ratted you out, Eli, but Missy deserved better. You're cool now, but little boy, you was gross. It could be as simple as getting caught up in the mania. You ever hear commuters on the L hyping the new shortstop? See Cubs win on the front page of the Tribune, and suddenly you're checking StubHub for tickets to Saturday's doubleheader at Wrigley. If the marketers have successfully planted the subconscious seed that game time equals family time, you invite your nephew, splurge on jerseys, and voila, 2 new revenue streams. There's also the thrill of rooting for a team that might very well lose. Then, if it comes, the elation of the collective payoff, at the expense of the fans on the other side, who just as easily could have been the victors. Sports addicts share quite a bit with degenerate gamblers. The same neural pathways that light up when you hit $500 on the slots are tickled when your team scores a big win, with underdog victories feeling especially euphoric. Researcher and author of The Secret Lives of Sports Fans, Eric Simmons, explains this heightened joy in terms of pattern disruption. Since no win is 100% certain, every win comes with at least a small synaptic reward. But beating your heavily favored rival on the road? That, to your reward center, is hot stuff. I chased that hot stuff feeling for 3 decades straight. And like all addicts, I built up a tolerance. Early in Fanhood, a winning record, a franchise player to follow, or an occasional victory over a ranked opponent were all it took to keep a smile on my face and my team flags flying. But as the years went on, the bar was raised. The Battle of New Orleans planted the seed that our Vols could hang with and beat the best in the country, regardless of what the experts predicted. Us against the world, baby. Who cares what the analysts think? The Manning era taught us that we belonged in the national spotlight, to play in the best bowls, and that beating recurring opponents South Carolina, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt was a given. Pretty soon, games didn't matter. Wins didn't even matter, unless they were against a highly ranked opponent, preferably a highly ranked rival, and preferably in dramatic underdog comeback fashion. My brain's pleasure center wanted a dopamine flood like it got in '98 when the Vols beat the Gators, or later that year when they won the national championship against Florida State. But dramatic underdog comeback wins against highly ranked rivals are rare, and so I learned firsthand how the seasoned sports fanatic develops a hardened desensitization. Maybe I would have been better off at the casino. When you drop $100 at the blackjack table, at least the dealer doesn't follow you home and rub it in. But when you've publicly committed to a team, with your wardrobe, your social media posts, the boasts you've made at work, and they lose, you find belittlement anywhere fans of the winning team lurk. Church is awkward enough without smack talk from Cowboys fan Carl. How about them Cowboys? Yes, Carl. Peace be with you. Now go away. Don't get the wrong idea. While gambling with money is in many ways less risky than gambling with your identity, we'll talk about healthy replacements for fanhood in the next section. Poker, unsurprisingly, is not on the list. A lot of Freud's ideas were crazy. Girls do not have penis envy. Freud, you freaking weirdo. But his basic argument that insight into the motives of our subconscious empowers us to address and modify them still rings true. When you can see what's really happening in your head, you can better change and deal with it. Figuring that out isn't always easy, but try. Are there triggers that have seemed to make you more or less fanatical? Financial woes, familial expectations, workplace drama? What drove you to fanaticism in the first place? A tough time away from home like me? Some trauma that distracting yourself with a team helped you overcome? Whatever the reasons, the more clearly you can bring them into your conscious mind, the more effectively you can transcend them. So take some time to reflect. It's worth the trouble. Hint, it probably has something to do with your mom, you freak. Part 3. Manhood. Chapter 15. What then? So I'm beginning to understand why I was such a nut, and I'm definitely ready to move on. But so much of my life has revolved around my team. If I didn't have the preseason, the rivalry games, the playoffs to look forward to, what would I do? Learn the backstroke, play the guitar, build a treehouse, become a chef, give your significant other a massage, or shack with icy hot, start a business, run a 5K, take your kids on a hike, volunteer as a scout leader, write, sing, learn to throw a football your fucking self. If you're too old to play, become a volunteer coach. All that sports crap you've been glorifying, give it a shot. We get one life. One. Don't spend it watching other people live. Vicarious is an awesome song. The band's Tool. YouTube it, and pay no attention to the giant sperm creature in the video. But a sad way to live. Think about all the cool adventures and goals you've always wanted to pursue but have neglected in exchange for the safety of cheering. Replacing team fanaticism with an authentic passion will not only make your life more satisfying and enjoyable, it will make your recovery faster, more complete, and permanent. Addiction therapists know all about the power of replacing negative with positive objects of desire. Credit old pal and phenomenal musician Doug Sneed for offering this insight. Chewing gum, lots of gum, helped me quit smoking. Focusing on the family right in front of me helped me let go of the compulsion to check Facebook every 10 minutes. Pursuing the crazy adventure you'll read about in the next chapter not only fulfilled a lifelong dream, it helped me quit fanhood. The idea isn't to simply stop being a fan, it's to start being a man, which at minimum means finding meaning, purpose, and satisfaction in your pursuits, not the pursuit of strangers who play with balls. The what and how are up to you. Some fans are suppressing business goals, others athletic goals. Maybe we'll see you on American Ninja Warrior a year from now. Others spiritual goals. It all depends on what seems right for you. But you'll know you've found a worthwhile alternative to fanhood, a positive outlet for that misplaced time and attention, when it meets 3 criteria. It's a little scary, it feels authentic, and you envision yourself being proud on the other side. Scary, authentic, and proud. Well, damn, Looks like our acronym is SAP. Maybe it is a little sappy, but I'm okay with that. What you do with it is up to you. You can take the blue pill, continue pretending our culture's manquilizer is legit, fall back in line with the masses and indulge in their slavish passivity, or you can take the red pill and continue down the rabbit hole, only now at a sprint. I chose the latter, and had the time of my life. Chapter 16. Midlife Crisis MMA. Remember Ralphie's bully from A Christmas Story? I unfortunately had my own Scut Farkas. My Scut didn't have freckles or wear a coonskin cap, but he did have squinty eyes and a similar gift for harassing kids younger and smaller. My Scut happened to ride my school bus. He'd sit behind me and flip my ear, or beside me and frog my arm, always just out of sight of the bus driver. Sometimes he'd mix things up and frog my leg instead, always remembering to remind me of how much of a pussy I was. A year older and always bigger, he started around kindergarten and continued into high school. Why I never snapped and busted his nose like Ralphie did, or shoved a drumstick up his ass, I don't know. I guess I got conditioned to take it. Though I really wanted to, I never mustered the courage to fight back. And my failure to stand up for myself despite hundreds of opportunities was an enduring shame. Though I'd grown up, served in the military, earned a fancy degree, and started a family, I'd never fully shaken that shame. Boyhood me had been a habitual coward, and adult me couldn't fully forgive him. You saw in the Taking Stock chapter that this hadn't stopped me from accomplishing a few things. But my embarrassing past was always there just beneath the surface, unfinished business for which I had yet to atone. I often fantasized redemption. No, not tracking Scut down and putting his eye out with a Red Ryder BB gun. You can't judge a man for what he did as a boy. I'm not the same person, neither is he. Rather, my redemption fantasy was to box or kickbox, or even do a mixed martial arts fight. Competitively fighting, something way outside my comfort zone, would prove I wasn't a wimp anymore. But fighting was for other guys, tougher guys, way tougher than me. Plus, my prime, if I'd ever had one, had long since passed. That dream would just have to remain a dream. But on the day of the drummer boy incident, I was 37, just old enough for an early midlife crisis. Walking from the scene of the meltdown, searching my soul as to why I had gotten so mad, in addition to seeing the terrible example I was setting for my kids, I realized it wasn't too late to pursue my fight dream. Considering a possible world in which I never did it, I imagined myself at 85 in a rocking chair, reflecting, "You always wanted to fight, but never had the guts. Pussy, you had one life. Now it's too late." The thought of living out my days without fight footage to watch with my grandkids, or old stinky wrist wraps to chase them around with, was terrifying. Despite anything else I'd done or would do, the shame of never getting in the ring would be unbearable. So I mentally committed to take the plunge. I joined a boxing gym, started working with an MMA team, and set an unforgettable midlife crisis adventure in motion. I had no illusions of becoming a UFC champion. I just needed one fight to prove to myself that I could do it. I needed to become the hero boyhood me deserved, and I needed to do it now. The journey wasn't easy. Black eyes, a busted, probably cracked nose, exhausted and possibly concussed, so badly that I had to pull over on the way home after a kickboxing fight and throw up. But was it worth it? You're damn right it was worth it. Here's what I wrote in my journal after my first boxing match. It was an awesome experience. Being one of the fighters amongst the audience beforehand, getting my hands taped and gloved up, stepping through the ropes and under the lights, sitting on a stool and spitting in a bucket during the breaks, just like in the movies, slugging it out for 3 solid rounds and shaking lots of supportive fans' hands afterwards. I won't spoil the story, but my second boxing fight went even better than my first. Then it was time to transition to kickboxing. During the third round, I had what I've come to call my blood sport moment. I was getting tired, and my opponent, a tattooed, shave-headed dude 14 years my junior named Logan Steele, has there ever been a scarier kickboxer name? Logan Steele? Landed a series of hard headshots that left me woozy. The worst part of them was a Superman punch. Logan, who it turns out had more experience than his coach disclosed to the promoters, reared back as if he was going to throw a roundhouse kick to my thigh, but instead lunged forward like the Man of Steel flying into Zod, bringing all his weight to bear through his knuckles into my jaw. I was rocked like never before. In a daze, a voice came to me. "Oh man, I'm about to get knocked out. Maybe I should just let him. If I get knocked out, I can finally rest, and I've never had that experience before." maybe it's a cool buzz. Allowing myself to get knocked out made a surprising amount of sense. Rest is good. I was tired. Why not? But as that voice had me almost convinced, another voice, a louder voice from deeper inside, replied, "No! Hit that son of a bitch! Keep pushing! No stopping!" The momentum had been in his favor. I was hurt, exhausted, and thanks to some weak voice from the ether, considering giving up, expecting him to knock me unconscious any moment. My weaker side was ready to accept that fate. Rest, enjoy the buzz. But my stronger side knew getting knocked unconscious would not be a cool experience. I'd worked for this for months. I only had to go another round, and I knew I could do it. Despite being near my physical breaking point, despite just having had the shit kicked out of me, I kept going, kept pushing, kept hitting. I persevered, and the shaved-headed, tattooed, 14 years younger Logan Steele backed down. Watching Peyton Manning throw touchdowns on TV never made me so tired I threw up. I never got a black eye shaking a pom-pom, but I wouldn't trade my Bloodsport moment and dozens of other memories or the proof in my home office, a Fight of the Night trophy, a winner's medal, and pictures for anything. Boyhood wuss me? Vindicated. Midlife crisis challenge? Complete. Fanhood? Shed. I learned a lot about my approach to obstacles, straightforward, persistent, how much my family means to me, and that I'm far tougher than I thought. You can read my full manhood transition in Year of the Fighter, lessons from my midlife crisis adventure, what it felt like to fight, and sometimes beat, guys half my age, what it was like to train under a Golden Gloves champ who once went 3 rounds with Floyd Money Mayweather, how I befriended a former meth dealer saved by boxing and Jesus, meet the local Chuck Norris karate master, whose business I kinda stole from when I was a teenager, and even learn my real name. Sorry, it's not Tommy Knoxville. This book was just a tad too edgy for my usual brand. Shedding fanhood and embracing my manhood was one of the best decisions of my life. Though maybe embracing my manhood isn't the best way to put it. The big, crazy, awesome thing I'd always wanted to do, but had never mustered the guts to do, the thing I was running from, which had me pushed into the depths of fanhood, I did it. But we're not here to relive my post-fanhood triumph. We're here to kickstart yours. Chapter 17. The Formula. Deep down, you've known for a while that fanhood is a waste. Everybody does. We're just too scared, or too polite. This truth hurts. To say it out loud. You're also gaining a little insight into the reasons that have driven and kept you there. An excuse? A distraction? An avoidance? You've also reviewed my criteria for selecting life-affirming adventures that will supplant your former fixation on a team. They're a little scary, they feel authentic, consistent with the real you, and you envision being proud on the other side. The corny acronym that sticks? SAP. Have something in mind? Good. You're now ready for the 3 steps that will make your 85-year-old self and your current self smile. I cover these in more depth in Year of the Fighter, but in a nutshell, they are commit, begin, research. CBR happens to be the name of Honda's sportiest crotch rocket. So to remember commit, begin, research, just picture yourself popping a wheelie on a tricked-out Honda CBR. Or imagine snuggling a cuddly blue raccoon while eating creamy bacon ravioli. Whatever works for you. Step 1. Commit. Everyone loves to fantasize, loves to wish, but few commit. For all the dreamers, he who commits and actually does is the exception. Man, it would be so cool to be a skydiving instructor. What a life. I've always wanted to visit Germany in October. Wouldn't that be awesome? I wish I had time to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Whatever your fantasies, if you've not been doing anything about them, now's the time to switch out of fantasy pretend cheerleader mode and into accomplishment doer achiever mode. Harry Potter may have had adventures fall into his lap, but no Hagrid is going to break down our door and rescue us. If we want it, we have to take it. Committing, really committing, can't be purely mental. If we leave our goals in our head, that's where they'll likely remain. But as life coach Brian Tracy teaches, we can outsmart our lazy, risk-averse subconscious by putting pen to paper. You'll have doubts, worries, what-ifs. And writing your big goal down means you're serious this time, which means you might fail. Oh no. But pushing through this early hesitance is one price all doers must pay. Trust me, it's worth it. This past weekend, I watched a big boxing match on ESPN. Before my transformation, the fight would have been a cool spectacle. but mysterious, foreign, scary. Now, it feels like a homecoming. The athletes on TV are faster, tougher, fancier, and have better stamina than I ever did. But having trained and competed, I can relate. I can appreciate their angles and off-balance slips. I've weathered a barrage of punches, staved off a comeback, and mounted one of my own. I know what it feels like to take hard shots, to push through when my body's screaming stop, and the primal joy of punching dudes in the face, the raw, undiluted satisfaction. By the way, if you have fitness goals, know that your body is a liar. It will swear it can't when it definitely can. Don't give yourself a heart attack, but know that you're stronger than the flesh will admit. All else equal, I find vigorous dancing more enjoyable. It works up a good sweat, is mentally stimulating, my nose doesn't get smashed. Good times. So I'm not here to convince you to abandon soccer for karate, Daniel-san. My point is simply that doing is far more enjoyable than wishing. In a phrase, dreams are for suckers. Or more precisely, dreams that remain dreams are for suckers. So no more wishing, no more fantasizing. You need concrete goals, a written commitment to pursue them, and action. Now is the season of doing. Step 2. Begin. Just as soon as you commit, do something, anything, to move in the direction of accomplishing your big goal. This could be as simple as sending an email, or making a phone call, visiting the courthouse, or buying a suitcase, picking out running shoes, or throwing out a box of donuts. Success guru Tony Robbins considers acting boldly the core of any viable personal manifesto. It binds us to the path and builds momentum. It makes us feel instantly energized, enthused, alive. Plus, as self-help OG David Schwartz put it, action cures fear. Whatever anxiety the mere thought of pursuing your adventure is causing, this is natural. I certainly felt it. And when I set new goals like publishing potentially inflammatory audiobooks, I still do. It will begin to dissolve as soon as you act decisively. Thinking and planning amplifies fear. Acting cures it. At the outset of my combat arts adventure, the thing that most eased my mind was finally visiting the local boxing gym, and not simply watching other guys train, but jumping in and working out myself. Worrying over when I'd do it or what it would be like only made things worse, and didn't bring me any closer to my destiny. But when I actually went, and especially when I did my first full boxer's workout, man, what a workout. I started seeing myself as a fighter. I accepted the fact that I belonged in the ring just as much as anyone willing to put in the work. After a couple of months of conditioning, the next step was slipping through the ropes for my first sparring session. It didn't go especially well. I mistook a padded jockstrap for headgear, which means, yes, the sweaty jock part was draped over my face. And when my coach corrected me, that goes down here, and I squared off against my first opponent, I looked less like a fighter and more like a moving punching bag, as my reformed meth dealer buddy put it. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't especially fun at first, but man, what a relief. All that pent-up worry I'd been harboring, all the risks I'd blown out of proportion, I sweated out. I learned that I apparently have a decent chin. For the fitter, younger fighters with more muscle and skill, definitely tested it. But the more I sparred, the better I got. I started feeling comfortable in the ring. Rather than simply eating shots, I started dishing them out. Pretty soon it was showtime for my first fight, then my second, then my third. It's hard to explain how good that journey felt then, and how good recalling it feels now. I want you to experience the same satisfaction and pride. That's the whole point of this. There was a time I could have never imagined competitively fighting. Now the ring just feels like home. In many ways, my happy place. Remember Happy Gilmore's happy place, with the cowboy midget riding a stick horse and his grandma playing the one-armed bandit? No? Okay. Action not only cures fear, sometimes it creates joy, and other times, cowboy midget hallucinations. As I said earlier, there's something primally satisfying about hitting dudes in the face, a life-changing thrill that I'd have never experienced had I not committed and taken those initial steps. At each stage of the journey, wondering and hoping and fretting, thinking about what I wanted and needed to do next only added to the stress. But when I acted, that's where progress began and fear ended. I want the same for you. So remember, after you commit, don't wait. People who wait for conditions to be perfect before acting wait until they're dead. That's not you. You commit, then immediately begin. Step 3. Research. At work and in life, I've seen so many spend so much time thinking rather than doing that I'm convinced some believe thinking is doing. That's why the order is commit, begin, then research. I don't want you to get stuck in the paralysis by analysis trap. People will study and hem and haw until their window of opportunity has closed. Some seem to like it that way, I guess so they can avoid the risk of failure. But risking failure, boys and girls, is the price of success. I got my ass handed to me when I first started boxing. This kid named Tristan hooked my temple so much that my head felt, and probably looked, like a speed bag. But I got better. Not better than Tristan, but good enough to hold my own against him. And good enough to get some sweet payback. Mainly just stiff jabs, but stiff and frequent enough for me to feel good about our exchanges. The point? We get this one life. One. Don't spend it planning and considering and deciding, hiding from uncertainty and discomfort when you could be winning. But at the same time, once you get going, and only once you get going, commit, begin, then research. Figure out who's already blazed the path you're on and learn from them. Whether your goal is to become a bowling champion, direct an after-school program, star in a play, become a NASCAR driver, launch a nonprofit, open a bakery, someone's already done it and written a good book on how. Read, or listen to, that book and your path will not only be much easier, but your chances of success much higher. Since you're listening right now, chances are good you already know this. But that there are intriguing, concise, practical books and audiobooks on how to do most anything was a huge revelation for me that didn't happen until my 20s. I had been too busy watching the Dukes of Hazzard and playing Atari, then Nintendo, for books. Yuck. But once I learned the secret, a new world opened up. When I was fighting, I not only learned from my coaches and teammates, but from Smokin' Joe Frazier. His box like the pros taught me that a proper hook should feel like you're slamming a door, pivoting on the ball of your front foot, arm bent at a 90-degree angle, swinging your fist towards your opponent's temple, jaw, or ribs. A friend who had completed his own midlife crisis fighting challenge, which in his case had doubled as post-divorce therapy, lent me his fighter mindset books, neuro-linguistic programming books, and books on jiu-jitsu technique and wrestling. Spoiler, I didn't win the UFC welterweight division, but I was far more successful than I would have been without those resources. Without them, my modest fight record would certainly be worse, and I might have given up the first time Tristan rang my bell. But with them, I had the adventure of a lifetime, enjoyed a little success and irreplaceable personal growth. So find and apply the wisdom of those who've done your big thing already, but remain wary of man's tendency to ponder rather than do. I'm a philosopher by training, so I appreciate the value of thorough decisions. But the truly wise man knows that while the unexamined life isn't worth living, the unlived life isn't worth examining. No more indecision. No more delay. Transfer the excitement you used to feel for their season onto your season. Be your own marketing department, your own hype machine, your own coach with your own pregame and halftime pep talks. Nobody's going to do it for you. Accept that responsibility. Nobody's going to give it to you. You have to take it. To get in the mood, look up the I Am a Champion speech on YouTube, as well as anything by formerly homeless motivational speaker Eric Thomas. Thomas is the guy your former heroes pay thousands to light a fire under their complacent asses. He'll light a fire under ours for free. All you have to do is search. Chapter 18. Kenny Kool-Aids. As you distance yourself from your former team and start doing rather than cheering, friends and family will take notice. Some will be supportive, but some will not. Some will take it personally, as might an alcoholic confronted by a drinking buddy who's decided to sober up. Changing suggests you think they need to change too. And whether you're actually judging, this will stir inner conflict. It will remind them of whatever's driven them to fanhood and challenge their lifestyle. Some will respond by trying to drag you back down. We'll call these people Kenny Kool-Aids, after the Jonestown cultists who convinced one another drinking poison was a good idea. Kenny Kool-Aids will say things like, "This is our year, I can feel it. Come on, we've got a new coach. It's gonna be great." Or, "Hey, I got tickets to the game. Join me. You know you wanna." Or, "Quit being a prissy wimp and support the team. It's what men do." Kenny Kool-Aids will try to guilt trip you, reminding you of a family or group tradition. But once you tell them you're done, and especially when you explain why, they need to respect your decision. In case they don't, and some won't, be prepared to part ways. If they want to spend their time and money cheering for men of action rather than being men of action, that's their call. But you know better. One life, far too precious to waste watching rather than doing. Remember Robert, the roommate who was with me during the end zone grass pillaging 98 Florida game overtime win? The one who later named his son Neyland? We had a tradition of meeting up with a group of high school buddies for one UT home game every season. Even after he moved to Arizona and I, temporarily, moved to Baltimore/DC, we made a point to travel in for that one annual bonding event. When I first broke ties with the Vols, I was embarrassed to tell the crew. The team had been such an integral part of my identity for so long and had served as such a strong connection for us, I wasn't sure our friendship could evolve. But I was sure that being true to myself was more important. The drummer boy incident had opened my eyes, and I knew I needed to tackle my midlife crisis combat sports adventure before I got any older. Once I made the decision, there was no returning to a distracted life of mediocrity. At first, the guys didn't believe I was serious. I was usually the one pestering them to make it to the next game. I'd yell the loudest, act the wildest, essentially the cheer captain of our annual reunion squad. They assumed I'd come around once the team started winning again. But this wasn't a fair weather thing. After the Vols eventually beat Florida, I still wasn't interested. I'd traveled too far down the path of manhood to ever absorb myself in fanhood again. Eventually, the guys became cool with my decision. In fact, Robert concluded that breaking ties might really have been the best thing for me. He told me, "I think you took it more seriously than I ever did." This is questionable since he's the guy who named his son Neyland. But hey, if he's able to balance fanhood with manhood, that's fine with me. I'm here to help fans who want to change, not harass those who don't. So it's okay to maintain friendships with old fanhood buddies. Just set clear boundaries and don't put up with any Kenny Kool-Aid bullshit. Make it known that you value them, but that you need to take responsibility for your life and make it one actually worth living. While it will be natural to want to save Kenny Kool-Aids, I don't recommend coming on too strong, calling them sissy cheerleaders or anything like that. This would cause unnecessary harm and likely undermine any influence you might have. Instead, if they keep pestering you, try asking them how the men they idolize approach life. Whose jersey do you think Patrick Mahomes snuggles up to at night? That's right, Mahomes doesn't live through other men. He focuses on his own success, his own season. The lesson? Don't follow sports stars. Follow their example. Chapter 19. But, Jack Nicholson! As you put down the pom-poms and pick up the skydiving goggles, running shoes, college books, coach's clipboard, shark food, etc., there's a negative voice in your head, your bad wolf, who's going to try to squash your ambition. He's going to whisper hypnotic lies, lull you back into precious cheerleading sleep, try to make you forget about SAP and CBR. Don't tell me you've already forgotten the acronyms already. It's scary, authentic, proud, and cuddly blue raccoon. Your bad wolf will tell you there are plenty of successful sports fanatics out there. Manly men, high achievers. If they can balance fanhood with a life fully lived, so can you. Have you seen The Departed? The Shining? If the winner of 3 Academy Awards wants to let loose at Laker games, that doesn't make him any less of a man. I can be manly and fanly, just like Jack. Are you Jack Nicholson? Neither am I. But even if we were, every minute he spent cheerleading is a minute he's not been doing something he wants, needs, or is afraid to do. Who knows what unfinished bucket list haunts the real Ed Cole? But I guarantee there's something. No man gets that absorbed unless he's running. The problem with fanhood is that even if you're curing cancer with managing an orphanage and perfecting biofuel, it ties a huge chunk of your identity to things completely beyond your control. Real men take credit for their accomplishments and responsibility for their mistakes. They don't whine about Brady's fumble or Harden's foul. They don't strut around like they're the striker who hit the penalty kick that won the World Cup or sulk like they're the goalie who missed it. Real men reflect on their values, translate their dreams into goals, their goals into plans, and their plans into action. They don't simply wish or want. They pursue and accomplish. Their hands are too busy doing to shake pom-poms. Man, but what about Spike Lee and the Knicks, Ice Cube and the Raiders, Jerry Seinfeld and the Yankees, Vladimir Putin and the St. Petersburg Zenit? Successful, manly men and fans. When you're running Russia, we can talk. Until then, man up. Pointing to successful sports fanatics is a bad wolf rationalization. Live your life, not theirs. We've been over this. Chapter 20. But, I'm too fat, broke, and busy. Sometimes, a deflected bad wolf will circle back and attack your flank. He'll shift from trying to convince you there's no need to change to trying to convince you you're too weak to change. You don't have the time or the money. You're too old or too young, too tall or too short. Just watch the game. It's safer. Have you ever heard of Nicholas Vujicic, the Australian born with tetraamelia syndrome? Instead of arms and legs, he got flippers and stubs. These are his words. His occupation? motivational speaker and evangelist. His latest triumph? Becoming a dad. Suck it up. Earlier, I suggested that rather than worshiping athletes, you should consider becoming one yourself, and that if you physically couldn't, to give coaching a shot. Well, if we're going to talk about the motivational speaker without arms or legs, we need to talk about the football coach with the same condition. Californian Rob Mendez grew up a 49ers fan. Passionate about football but unable to play, he decided to apply his mind to the game instead. Volunteering as a manager for his high school team, Rob studied the plays, the moves, the drills. He tested strategies on the Madden video game, then in real life, learning what worked for the team and what didn't. For 12 years, he paid his dues as an assistant coach, running the quarterback drills from his wheelchair, drawing up plays on a whiteboard with a magic marker in his teeth. Then in 2018, he finally got his chance to be a head coach, entrusted with Prospect High School's junior varsity team. A program that had been suffering losing seasons more often than not, Rob took his Panthers all the way to the West Valley JV League Championship. In his very first year, with no arms or legs. They didn't win, but Rob was proud as ever of his team, and his team proud as ever of him. And even though the loss hurt, you're not going to hear excuses or complaints. Quote, complaining is my number one poison, so I try to stay positive. You hear stories about people with cancer fighting for their lives. I'm fighting to have something to drink, to feel comfortable, so I try not to complain. End quote. I stumbled upon Rob's SportsCenter featured documentary, Who Says I Can't, the Saturday morning it first aired in February 2019. Thanks to producer Kristen Lapis for pursuing his story, and to ESPN for airing it. Randy Posh, author of The Last Lecture, is another remarkable person without excuse or complaint. Diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and given 6 months to live, he decided to kick the rest of us in the pants with a seminar on how to kick ass and take names. Randy had a dream of being a Disney Imagineer, so he worked to become their go-to virtual reality consultant. He'd always wanted to experience zero gravity, so he arranged to do it in NASA's astronaut training Vomit Comet jet. He'd fantasized playing in the NFL, and while he never did, he did negotiate the chance to practice with the Steelers. Do you have arms and legs? Do you expect to live for more than 6 months? That's what I thought. Whatever excuses your bad wolf is whispering, your life is too important, and Randy would emphasize too short, to listen. Nick knows you can do it. So does Rob. So suck it up. Let's go. Chapter 21. But, it's my outlet. Let's begin with a brief quote from Joseph Campbell's The Power of Myth. The one who watches athletic games instead of participating in athletics is involved in a surrogate achievement. But when you think about what people are actually undergoing in our civilization, you realize it's a very grim thing to be, a modern human being. The drudgery, it's a life-extinguishing affair. Your job sucks. Your girlfriend's mean. The specter of mortality haunts your existence. Stuck in a cubicle or on an assembly line, the season makes life's drudgery tolerable. Or maybe you enjoy the serenity of a monk, yet resent having to be so adult all the time. Game time is the one time you can let loose. Bad behavior isn't just accepted, it's expected. And amongst the crowd in body paint or dark enough sunglasses, you can play the anonymous adolescent. If only for a few hours. I can relate. I rawed my vocal cords at many a big game. Mix 1 part SEC matchup with 2 parts Coke and 1 part Jack, or the other way around for some games, and this mild-mannered southern gentleman became a bird-flipping game day jackass. Yeehaw! Was this self-loathing projected outwards? Aging me reliving high school rebellion? Premature midlife angst? All I know is that big games released my inner jerk. During one game, I worked my way deep into the student section behind the Auburn bench, and when the stadium got just quiet enough, yelled, "Hey Cadillac Williams! Yo mama!" I'm not sure Williams, their star running back at the time, heard me, but his teammates sure did. They turned and looked, not with anger, but with confusion and pity. Too much moonshine, hillbilly? Cadillac's an unpaid college athlete making something of himself. What are you doing, fanboy? The psychologist would say my disinhibition, more plainly, my jackassery, was the result of the de-individuation I felt in a crowd of thousands of like-minded fans. For more, see The Psychology of Social Sports Fans, What Makes Them So Crazy, by Thomas Van Schaik at sportsnetworker.com. Maybe that's true, but I'm sure I acted a fool in part because I had dreams and goals I was neglecting. How do I know? Funny thing about finally becoming a fighter. I haven't had the urge to yell at an athlete, a television, or a drummer since. I was initially tempted to simply transfer my fanaticism onto pro fighters. Live through Anderson the Spider Silva, or that Triple G boxer with the lightning punches. To punctuate my break from the Vols, I hung a sign on my home office wall that read, "We are now UFC fans." Thankfully, instead of swapping one fanhood for another, I bought a mouthpiece and got to work. Fighting was definitely tougher. Nobody ever got a concussion listening to sports talk. Though some callers certainly sound like they suffered a great deal of head trauma, and others like they're on the verge of a stroke. But actually competing confirmed its vast superiority. One reason cheerleading can sometimes feel manly is that it triggers some of the same biological responses as competing. A 1998 study showed that when a fan's team wins, he receives a testosterone boost, as well as a testosterone dip when his team loses. Eric Simmons, author of The Secret Lives of Sports Fans, The Science of Sports Obsession, attempted to replicate that study by taking saliva samples while watching his favorite hockey team, the San Jose Sharks. His results were inconclusive, so he decided to research the physiological mystery further. MRI tests showed that watching a buzzer beater activates the same synaptic pathways as actually hitting the shot yourself. The effect is more intense for the athlete and more pronounced for fans who have played that sport themselves. But those vicarious thrills and chills you've had as a fan aren't simply in your mind. They're measurable in your physical brain as well. For more on mind-body dualism, Google Descartes, or take my philosophy intro. The chemical connection helps explain how we get so swept up in the moment and why the escape has such a powerful attraction. As Simmons put it, quote, "Part of the enjoyment of sports comes from surrendering your control and empowering your hormones and neurons to do their thing." End quote. Oddly enough, after intimate interviews with some of the most devoted fans of the historically worst teams, and after a thorough explanation of the psychophysical forces driving the addiction, Simmons concluded that continuing fanhood is actually a smart choice. This book is for fans who want to let go, and I have no desire to spoil the fun of fans who are content. If a guy can do fanhood in a healthy way, or if upon reflection he prefers the fantasy, that's his call. But let's be honest, it's a sad existence. We all deserve better. And we can all have better. At the same time, I do get it. Spectator sports can be a welcome distraction, an outlet, a superficial way to connect with a tribe, or simply a chance to hang with the guys. There's probably a warring instinct being satiated in there somewhere too. And I'd rather repressed Germans cheer for their Die Mannschaft soccer team than invade Poland again. So here's where I'll budge. I'm not saying you can't watch sports at all. When you first make the switch, do put distance between yourself and your old team. Do Purge. After my awakening, I didn't watch the Vols for 2 years. No highlights, no web clips, nada. If they came on TV, I immediately changed the channel. If they were shown at a restaurant, we sat, or ate, somewhere else. The clean and total break was absolutely essential to my recovery. But I did watch other teams. Notice how I said watch, not cheer for. And I did study UFC and boxing matches since I was planning my fight run. The key is that I didn't associate with particular fighters, fight teams, or even fighting styles. I just observed the contest, then got back to living. So it's okay to look forward to the season. Generally, if you must. Watch some games, sometimes. Keep the basic ESPN package. Just don't anchor your identity to any one team. Don't allow contrived rivalries and a made-up contest to supplant an authentic life fully lived. That's the unmanly part. That's the pathetic part. That's the shame. The waste. If your addiction runs as deep as mine did, I recommend a complete break, both from your old team and also from the sport, for at least a season. No watching just the highlights, no listening to just a few minutes of sports talk, no reading just one article. Overcoming a serious addiction requires a serious commitment. Going cold turkey will prove that you can thrive, find meaning and satisfaction without your former team. And once fully recovered, when you feel strong enough, there's nothing wrong with casually dabbling and spectating every now and again, though you may find you've developed such a disdain for fanhood that the appeal has completely vanished. Chapter 22. Return to Neyland. September 23rd, 2017. Today, I attended my first UT football game in 3 years. The father of one of my son's best friends offered tickets last minute, and I reluctantly decided to give it a try. On top of assuming the boys would have a good time, it was a test. After abstaining from anything remotely fan-like for a very long time, I claimed to be cured. I felt like I was cured, but was I? Had it been a Florida game, I would have said no. While thickly scabbed over, the wound was still too tender. But they were playing the University of Massachusetts, a non-conference buffer game designed to give the team a break between tougher opponents, like when Michigan schedules Appalachian State. So, a Florida game? No. Bama? No. But UMass? I could handle UMass. Surely. I approached like Lieutenant Worf on a covert mission to Kronos. Finally, the Star Trek references you've been waiting for. Surrounded by clanmates who assumed I remained allegiant to the Klingon Emperor, returning to Neyland. After the Purge. After internalizing fanhood as cheerleading. After my crazy midlife crisis fight adventure. Felt as sneaky as it did surreal. A man in fan's clothing, detached from the outcome. For the first time, I was able to simply observe. The sound of familiar fight songs echoing from inside greeted us as we neared the entrances. So did a 9-foot statue of Coach Neyland, known as General Neyland for his service in the Army. Perched just inside, a stone gatekeeper to a towering brick structure with flags along the top, all designed to appear as his forever fortress. As we reached our seats, I noticed the announcer praising the exceptional loyalty of Vol fans. Suppress the risk of defection, check. The collective impact of their cheers, blur the boundary between spectator and competitor, check. And the storied history of the Pride of the Southland marching band. Appeal to tradition? Check. References to tradition were everywhere. In fact, even at the concessions. Waiting in line for a snack, a sign read, UT football in Petros. It's tradition. Ah yes, the venerated tradition of chili, corn chips, and Vol football. Good to see the legend continuing in my absence. I noticed pictures of Vol greats hung in the passageways, as well as former stars' retired numbers by the scoreboards. Gray-haired members of past teams were trotted onto the field between quarters to be honored, and gawked at. Grainy replays from seasons gone by on the Jumbotron. A gold star to the marketers for playing up the enduring legacy thing, making their research psychologist mentors proud. Though most were civilized, I did see and hear, though fortunately didn't smell or feel, partially jovial, partially belligerent drunks. One was hanging over the tunnel into Gate M, telling everyone who walked underneath, "I'm right here! Hey! I'm right here!" Okay, buddy. Good for you. 4 cops monitored the situation, making sure he stayed right there. I wondered how many times I had been that moron in someone else's eyes. I have to admit, it was a little sad. Excruciating heartbreaks aside, I had shared a great deal of joy in that place. And I'd shared it with some special people at some special times. My dad when I was 10, my girlfriend, then wife, in my 20s, my son as a new dad, then with high school buddies for our annual mini reunion. Seeing the stadium on TV had been my connection to home when I was stuck in the desert, and Manning's greatness had been my personal redeemer when I was a lowly airman. I didn't mention this before, but I actually flew in on leave in '97 to see him beat Texas Tech in the season opener, taking my 2 best friends from elementary school with me. But my return after a 3-year hiatus confirmed that the spell was broken. Despite the tug of nostalgia, I could finally see the spectacle for what it was. A manhood-robbing opiate for the misled. Though I was passing the test, I was worried I might be sending my son mixed signals. He'd seen me at my worst. The television yelling, the mood swings, and had witnessed how difficult fanhood had been to shake in a culture where abandoning the team is viewed by many as traitorous. I'd risked friendships, even relationships with family members. The Vols remain a touchy subject for me and my sister. I had explained why the hassle was worth it, and my son had agreed to help, always careful to refer to UT sports teams as the Vols rather than Tennessee, so there would be no confusing strangers who play with balls with the beautiful state and people we continue to love. Kenny Chesney's "Back Where I Come From" still gives me chills. The same for Levon Helm's rendition of Tennessee Jed. Ain't no place I'd rather be. Either. So why would a man who claimed to have released the childishness of fanhood, while reaffirming his love for home, take his son to a game? Had I been lying to him? To myself? I was reassured when he was more interested in the campus library before the game and a museum after the game than what was happening on the field. Adults grouched about poor play calling and undisciplined corners, but the 9-year-olds had their priorities straight. Frolicking pregame in the library aisles, my son's friend exclaimed, "I love this place!" When the 3rd quarter came, he led the petition to leave early. We were cooking in the sun. The game wasn't especially enjoyable. UMass was threatening a Wyoming-style upset. And the boys seem to know that watching other men pursue their goals isn't nearly as worthwhile as doing something yourself, even if it's simply checking out a museum. I was okay. Respectfully disengaged, but okay. There just wasn't anything there for me. The recovering alcoholic has little use for the bar. He can smell the codependency and wants no part of it. Sober and content, he can confidently resist. Such is the strength you'll enjoy once you've ditched fanhood for good. 2 weeks later, an Air Force buddy I hadn't seen in 20 years called out of the blue. Both of us country boys from the volunteer state, we'd been best friends during boot camp, and during a drill sergeant affectionately nicknamed Satan. Now, working as a park ranger near Nashville, he'd found me online and had tickets to the UT South Carolina game. I was interested in seeing him, but not the team. I mentioned the drummer boy incident, and explained that as a result, I distanced myself from the program, but didn't have the heart to discourage him further. Eager to see an old pal, my best pal during those first few weeks in the military, I agreed to return to Neyland a second time. Was this the beginning of a pattern? Was I genuinely cured? Once again, I was pleasantly immune. Even better, able to observe the marketing schemes along with the fans' responses to it. I tried not to look down my nose at anyone. How could I? Society tells us it's normal, even macho, to be a rabid fan. When life sucks, it's an effective distraction. A way to feel like you're accomplishing something when you're really not. And the drama, the thrills, the shared euphoria? Grown men can openly express emotions in the context of fanhood we're otherwise expected to suppress. For those reasons and more, fanhood is possibly the most common form of self-medication, even when the side effects ultimately outweigh the benefits. So, I got it. I still get it. But that doesn't make it any less of a sissified waste. As they had done so many times before, the team lost a last-minute heartbreaker. My Air Force buddy didn't seem too upset. Perhaps seeing me dissociated inspired him to rethink his own fanhood. But I didn't push it. He'll have to come to that conclusion on his own. Watching friends and family go overboard as fans can be tough, but preaching about how silly it is would only drive them away. Instead, lead by example. Sooner or later, those with potential to come around will. Nudge gently, if you nudge at all, and trust that your living rather than cheering will inspire them to do the same. I know fanhood feels safer than living. I know the industry makes it look cool. I know friends and family are going to challenge your loyalty, tempt you with free tickets, even try to trick you into watching. Hey, we're having a get-together Saturday at the same time as kickoff. No special reason. Join us. Trust me, I know. But you've been down that dead end. You know it's a profit-driven ruse. The slow motion, the flags, the pageantry, all ploys to make fanhood seem more meaningful than it is. And you know that you deserve better and can have better. Whether your former team is on the winning or losing end of a streak, don't let their performance affect your self-perception. You didn't do jack to help the wins, and you didn't do jack to cause the losses. Find meaning in your record, and make it a record your 85-year-old self can be proud of. It's taken some heavy-duty brainwashing to convince us that second-rate cheerleading is worthwhile. And powerful, profit-hungry forces, backed by brilliant, albeit ethically suspect, psychologists, want to keep it that way. So it's going to take some heavy-duty deprogramming to escape. I hope associating fanhood with cheerleading has been as compelling a motivator for you as it was for me. Whatever adventures you've been neglecting, finally tackling them is going to be far more fun and fulfilling than the mediocrity of fanhood could ever be. So purge your old gear, in a box to the garage or back of the closet now, and make that list of what you've accomplished in the last 5-10 years to contrast with the team. Whether you've underperformed or outperformed those strangers, what's the scary, cool thing you've been avoiding? The one that feels authentic, and that you envision being proud of on the other side. Whatever that is for you, commit. Put pen to paper. Begin. Taking action now is the most important step. And research. Someone's already done it. Find and apply their wisdom. Comfort zone expansion is a beautiful thing, and easier when you're riding a Honda CBR or snuggling a cuddly blue raccoon. If I could box for the first time at 37, you can do your cool thing too. So what are you waiting for? Trash the skirt. Fanhood to manhood. Let's go. Chapter 23, Closing Thoughts. You're still here? Good. If you enjoyed Fanhood to Manhood, tell a friend, or write a brief review. If the guys who need this book are to find it, it won't be thanks to my fat marketing budget. So thanks in advance for your support. The Worldwide Brotherhood of Manly Men appreciates your service. And so do I. If you want more, check out Year of the Fighter, subtitled Lessons from My Midlife Crisis Adventure. Learn what it felt like to step in the ring for the first time, to go against fighters half my age, and to sometimes win. The joys of getting kicked in the face, of being so exhausted and possibly concussed that I puked, and the self-coaching it took to make a lifelong dream a reality. Friends made, relationships affirmed, values clarified, childhood vindicated, midlife crisis conquered. Phew. Plus, there's a whole section on the SAP and CBR stuff, with examples tied back to my fight experience. So if an inside look at my crazy adventure might help you tackle yours, check it out. Especially if you've ever fantasized becoming Rocky, enjoy a good UFC, or like that Cobra Kai show. Another good book under my real name, not Tommy Knoxville, that you might enjoy, The Best Public Speaking Book. If you avoid public speaking or cringe your way through it when forced, we can fix that. There's an Urban Honey Badger assertiveness drill scientifically proven to boost stage presence and thicken chest hair. You'll learn how to organize your messages so they're easier to remember and deliver. Discover and polish your authentic stage self. Plus, it has the basics on voice projection, enunciation, how to craft your silent message, friendly encouragement, and a joke or two. At the core are my 3 commandments of public speaking: know thy material, be thyself, and practice. Based on my experience going from terrified rookie to conference presenter, paid keynote speaker, and comedy club host, as well as years coaching students in my oral concentration philosophy classes, the idea is to not simply survive on stage, but to decide to dominate. Okay, enough with the book plugs. Thanks for sticking around for a few thanks. First, thanks to my wife and kids for putting up with me when I was a rabid fan, and for supporting me during my transition. I'm still a work in progress, and probably always will be, so thanks for your steadfast love and patience. Sports fanaticism borders on the religious where I come from, and breaking ties with the local team was a cardinal sin in many people's eyes, so thanks to the friends and family who've overlooked my heresy and stuck by me. Thanks to my original editor, Debbie Stansel, for your careful read, review, suggestions, and coaching. If not for your insight and suggestion, Fanhood to Manhood would be a mere section of Year of the Fighter. They're definitely better as standalone books. Equal thanks to my second editor, Eric Wyman, joining the project a year after Debbie, who was insistent that I be more authentic. I'm glad you convinced me to print pussy rather than puss, asshole rather than jerk, and shit rather than nothing at all. Even though my well-mannered 10-year-old tried to convince me to do the opposite, bless his heart. I even printed my first F-bomb in this one, albeit under a pen name. Thanks to my fantastic voice actor for this audiobook version, Justin Straight. Your versatility, attention to detail, and patience made all the difference. Thanks for helping make my artistic vision a reality, and for kindly accommodating my coaching and revision request, and masterful Fat Albert impersonation. Thanks to Colonel Gary Taft for reviewing an early draft of the book, and encouraging me to both bolster the psychological research section, which was virtually non-existent when he read it, and to consider toning down the skirt cheerleader stuff. I realized it could be perceived as insensitive and offensive, both to actual cheerleaders and possibly women in general. So when editor number 2, Eric, had the same reaction, on his advice I wrote the intro to explain and defend the approach, and took pains to clarify that while there's nothing wrong with being a cheerleader, sports fans are falsely portrayed as edgy contributors. My goal was to destroy that myth for the sake of my target audience, victims of toxic fanhood eager to change. But thanks for pushing me to broach it more diplomatically. And finally, thanks to all the coaches and teammates who helped me thrive during my transition. I was such a ridiculous sports fan, in part because I had been suppressing my fight dream. Actually living it is something for which I'll be forever proud. And I couldn't have done it without the support of many: Jesse, Poke, Jamie, Mr. Ogle, Matt, Buck, Scott, Mario, and Steven at the top of the list. Thank you, brothers. And of course, thanks to my wife for picking up my slack at home while I was busy getting punched in the face, and to my kids for excusing my absences, not getting too freaked out by my black eyes, and for always being in my corner. This has been Fanhood to Manhood, shock therapy for the recovering sports fanatic by Tommy Knoxville. a No-Tade Press audiobook. Copyright 2021. All rights reserved. Soundtrack Game Over by Jacob Lazat of Dark Cabin Studios. Read by Justin Straight.